Ooh. Okay, yeah. So, provided we don't have anything else to get through, we can start the show. Okay. So we start with a prologue. Oh wait, I'm called the GM. I'm clearly the keeper.
Yeah, that's what I just put in. Feel free to change it.
Yeah. Clearly, the keeper TM for this game. Okay, so the prologue is called Opening Night. So both of you being inhabitants of London, you and one of you is clearly in the art circles, the creative circles, that being Clinton Hardy, himself an artiste, and Thaddeus Morgan being of the, I suppose, the well-to-do himself as well, being exposed to quite a bit of culture. So this particular evening, we start on October the 17th of 1928. And you have determined that this would be a good night for you to go and see some, let's say, smaller production theater. And these are probably at least somewhat familiar circles to Clinton Hardy, even though he is not an actor himself. But the art circles in London are many, and they mix quite heavily as well. So you probably heard about, yep, Clinton?
I was just going to ask Dennis, since Dennis did the heavy lifting on our joint background, and I just sashayed in like the artist I am at the end of it, all looking fabulous. I was going to ask. Obviously, Thaddeus, I know that my dear elder sister and your good lady died in an unfortunate automobile accident. Obviously, I'm still not quite over it, but if you could refresh my mind as to exactly how long ago that was. Come on, Thaddeus, I know you're grieving deeply, but speak to me. We're going to share these things.
He's trying to find his voice.
We had technical issues.
The grief is still too near.
Indeed.
I do believe it's 5 years ago.
Okay, so I'm assuming, so obviously my character was sort of in seclusion in Paris. I'm assuming that I probably came back to London about 5 years ago for my sister's funeral, at which point I've probably renewed my acquaintance with her husband, Thaddeus. How do you envision our sort of like characters getting on? Because I'm obviously quite sort of arty and a bit sort of airy-fairy, and whereas you seem like a practical, sensible fellow with a good, like, firm head on his shoulders. How do you see our characters getting on? Because I know we're not related by blood, but we are sort of related by the common law.
Well, since Bethany's death, Thaddeus has changed his ways a bit and kind of took on a more bachelor type of lifestyle. He's quite social in that, but he's social in the gentlemen's clubs in London. There are some of those he's a member of. So, but since you are Bethany's beloved brother, he has taken you in on that account alone, in honor of her memory. Well, but I don't. Do you think? Do we find him living on his own in London? Or?
Well, I do have sufficient means to have like a small townhouse or something along those lines. But obviously, if you're looking for someone to teach you all about the swinging bachelor lifestyle, then obviously I would, for the good of blood and family, I would throw myself onto that bullet with abandon and try and shepherd you into something of the heaving, burgeoning social life of London. Although I've probably tried to get you to look a little bit outside your stuffy gentlemen's clubs with your glasses of port and your cigars and your musty old periodicals. But,
Well, you probably noticed that he seems to have a keen interest in the human psyche and the mind. So he's very interested in meeting new and interesting people. So on that account, he would be willing to go along.
well, in which case,
he's not a party animal as such.
Well, in which case, might I suggest I've invited you out to this this small theatrical production. There'll be some interesting people there, actors, albeit struggling, but actors nonetheless, and there'll no doubt be interesting people in the audience who come to watch this. Yeah, I think it'd do you good to get out of your little sort of inner circle for a while and come and join me for a night of culture and entertainment at the theatre.
What date did you say it was, Johannes?
It's the 17th of October, 1928, dear boy.
Yes, and you will find in Roll20 in your respective handout folders, you will find the playbill for the production selected by Clinton for this outing. Hopefully, if I've set the thing right. Yep.
Okay. Well, indeed. Well, as you can see, obviously, as you know, I've been living in the Loire Valley and Paris for a good number of years, and it's only logical I would take you to see a play adapted from a French play. Perhaps I've heard rumours of the original, and I've invited you along to see this adaptation. You know, if nothing else, it should be amusing to see how it's been adapted. Sometimes these things miss the subtleties of the original performance, but still, it's an evening out, mixing with new people. It'll get you away from your newspapers and your dry tomes on psychology. It'll do the power of good, fatty old boy.
You probably had to sell him on it because it's on a Wednesday, and that's not where he goes to the theater. So you had to sell it a little to get him to give up his Wednesday plan.
The first thing you need to learn about being a bachelor, Fatty, is that you can't have a strict routine. There's plenty of opportunities out there for an eligible young man like yourself, but you have to be willing to reach out and seize them when they come along. You can't simply fit everything into a neatly regimented box. After all, life just simply isn't like that, old boy.
Also, it's Thursday.
Is it Thursday?
See, that's how long he's been in his gentleman's club reading his musty old periodicals.
No, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Wednesday.
What the fuck?
Wednesday. And also, let's just take a moment here to appreciate that we're using some materials prepared by Chaosium back in the days of 14 years ago. Some of this material might have contradictory dates and stuff.
That's cool. It's kind of like just to highlight that he does have, like, he has what he does on Mondays, what he does on Tuesday.
So he has a schedule.
Extremely regimented, and he does not like to wear outside those plans, and that probably is something that have driven Clinton a little bit frustrated from time to time.
And I imagine Thaddeus also gets a little bit frustrated because I'm much more of a laissez-faire, sort of go where the wind takes me sort of person. You know, the chaotic vagaries of life. I sort of drift along from one thing to the next, looking for inspiration, perhaps a fling or two if I'm feeling in the mood, perhaps just an evening of entertainment with new people I've not met before. And although I do get a bit frustrated with Thaddy every now and again, I think, you know, if he adopted some of my ways and he sort of stepped outside his strictly regimented lifestyle, I think it'd do him the power of good. I'm starting to worry he's become a bit of a shut-in, a bit of a sort of, in a way, he's building his own prison since my sister's death.
But yes, let's go and see this play of yours.
Indeed, it's called the Queen and the Stranger. Well, that's a translated title. I won't bore you with the language differences, but I've heard rumours that it caused quite the stir back in its original format. I forget the details. Someone mentioned it to me in passing, but if nothing else, it'll be an entertaining little evening. And if you don't like it, your gentleman's club will always be there afterwards, and you can resume your normal routine. Live a little, Fatty, live a little.
Also, you might note, Thaddeus as well, the playbill is in your handouts, now that I correctly actually applied it there.
Yes.
So the curtain call is at 9 p.m. So it is quite the late showing. So.
Oh, well, I might even make some of the poker game then. Okay, well, he will be at the club and leave to attend this play at 9 then.
Mm-hmm.
And
I will arrange to call and pick him up in a taxi or something similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So sort of open as he comes walking out of the club. I imagine the smell of tobacco and port wafting out of the doors, sort of dripping from the very wood of the building.
Mm-hmm.
But as the door opens, I'll be there wearing like a nice suit, a big scarf, sort of wide-brimmed hat, probably into like the latest fashionable cut. Open the door, and I'll be like, "Come on, Thaddy, we can just make the curtain call. Shake a leg, old boy."
He takes off his hat and leans in and sits in the cabin. I do not like these automobiles. I had preferred a good brisk walk.
You need to move with the times, Thaddy. You need to move with the times. These things are going to be all the rage, they tell me. And then I sort of I tap on the back of the seat for the driver with my walking stick, and I'm like, quickly to the theatre, as quickly as you can make it, my good man.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The driver
drop him
grunts
a few extra coins, like to speed him up.
Oh yeah, the driver was starting to grunt acknowledgement when you jingled the shingles, and he's thank you, good sir. Like tips his hat and like pockets the money and steps on it.
Maybe a little more careful, driver. It is late at night, and it is late in the year. Wet road and everything. And he is clearly uncomfortable with this.
I sort of start to protest, and then I think back to obviously like what happened to my sister and her automobile accident. I think I was probably a little bit nervous because of that. And I'm going to go, my friend here is a little out of sorts, driver. If you could adopt a more sedate pace, obviously keep the coins.
Yeah. Again, like looks back halfway, nods, lowers the speed a little bit, and it turns into a leisurely glide through the evening streets of London. And we are heading towards the Scala Theatre, which stands on Charlotte Street between Goodhue Street and Tottenham Street. So it's not a very long ride at all, because the Gentlemen's Club will be somewhere around the good parts, the more affluent parts of London, and this isn't too far away. The sort of theater district, while this it's sprawling, but it's not too far away from the actual central parts of London. It's quite close by. So you find yourselves being deposited from the cab outside the Scala Theatre. It is not a very large venue at all, and that is entirely within your sort of preconceived notions of what this was going to be, Clinton. And outside, let's see. Let me get my notes. Right. So, like I said, the curtain time is 9 p.m., so it is quite dark already, seeing as we are already on the latter half of October, and the sky is overcast. It's very cloudy. You join the others standing outside the theater. And you note, as you stand around, the doors are closed, and you note that the audience draws from pretty much all various social circles. So there are more affluent folks like yourselves. However, there are also like not paupers specifically, because they would use their money for something a little bit different than theater, but what little they have. But you see more common folk as well being in the crowd here. The tickets are quite modest, so that does explain. It's not an exclusive showing by any means, and according to your expectations, yeah, this isn't extremely because it's a small circle, small production. The actors probably not being paid a lot, really. So this is, I guess, in maybe in Clinton's mind, this may be where the art lives, as far as that goes, because this isn't something you necessarily do to get the big bucks, and the success is hard won in the smaller theater circuits. So this is where the I suppose the more like raw passion for the arts lives.
Well, I do despise commercialism, so.
Mm-hmm. Which undoubtedly gives you some sleepless nights as you contemplate selling your next painting to sustain your
Indeed.
self.
Well,
Yep.
Unfortunately, artistic endeavours all very well, but one still has to keep the lights on and pay the bills, etc.
Yeah. There's food that needs to be bought, and so you stand outside. You take an overview of the audience outside. There's a good number, and so everyone's dressed in their best, obviously, such as you are. What that means for all the various social circles here varies greatly. Obviously, if you're not in the high income brackets, it's not going to be as fancy as the suits and accoutrement that you have. But still, everyone tries their best because it's only proper.
I'll probably be, as we're sort of stood in the queues outside, I'll probably be having a bit of a look around and see if I recognise anyone from any of the sort of artistic circles I'm moving, just so that I can sort of wave at them and be like, yoo-hoo!
Yeah, you think the shopkeep of the place where you buy your painting supplies is there with his wife. Let's call him. Let's get the name generator for our random NPCs out. So let's call this fellow is Philip Moore. So Moore's Painting Supplies is where you get your stuff. He imports a lot of the things that you use from various parts of Europe. He's a bit of a specialty dealer, and especially like you've put in several orders from the things that you used to use in France that you can't get here, and he imports them from there.
Yeah. So I'll be like, I say there, Philip, old boy.
He looks around and notices you. He waves over. Hello.
Fancy seeing you here, old fella.
Yeah, quite fortuitous. I didn't pick you for a theater fellow.
Oh, well, I'm interested in all of the arts, all manners of expression. Alas, my own talents in such things are rudimentary. As you know, I'm more in the way of a painting and poetry, but well, you have to admire the skill at the craft where you can find it.
Yes, very much so. This reminds me, I have your shipment coming in over the weekend. So.
Oh, splendid! I'm surprised you managed to get the gouache so quickly. I'll be by as soon as I can, probably within the next day or two to pick it up.
Good. Looking forward to it. And then, like he waves because he's being interrupted by his wife. Well, his wife is talking to him. He waves over to like I will see you later to like signals with his hand. Yeah, he turns to his wife. They talk, and there's a small bell that rings, and the door is open, and the folks are being let in to the actual theater itself. And there's the theater staff. They're handing out playbills such as you've already seen, but you will someone's handing you one of these now. It's exactly the same, and you also get the cast list, which I will now make available to you. So that's for Clinton, and then we have a cast list for Thaddeus. Yep. So you get these as you go in, and it's quite the modest theater, as you saw from outside. It's not a large venue. However, you are welcomed in. The friendly staff invites you to take your seats. They will guide you where you need to go. You get to your seats. Which seats have you bought? Have you bought the ones from way back where you can view everything on a grander scale, or are you at the front?
Well, I think out of respect for Thaddeus, who I know doesn't like to be in with sort of big crowds, he prefers his discreet little clubs, etc. If I've not been able to afford one of the sort of the boxes, the private things, I'll have probably tried to book us on the sort of rear rows so we can still sort of see over the audiences, but we're not sort of right down amongst all the people, so we've still got a bit of privacy. Yep.
So you've booked your seats towards the back, so to basically give more space to Thaddeus, so to speak. Yep. So you are directed where you need to go, and as people flood in, you figure there's maybe 100 people in the hall, which leaves it about half empty. So your guesstimate is maybe there's 200, 250 available seats total. So around 100 people in the audience today. And the interior of the theater, now that you're there, is gloomy, and the illumination there is set from gas lamps set evenly around the red painted walls, and there are also foot lamps below the stage's edge, and it's basically just waiting for everyone to get in, and then for the curtain call.
I think I'll probably take out a couple of sets of that. There's like opera binoculars on sticks that people look through, and I'll pass a set over to Thaddeus. And there you go, oh boy. At least we can, even if we're not getting close to the stage, at least we can see the action that's occurring.
Oh, thank you. I do have my own.
Oh well, I didn't want to assume. I didn't know how big a theatre goer you were. And I sort of I take the set back and
every Friday.
I figured Thaddeus probably goes to the opera.
No, he it depends on his friends, the McQueen, what they want to see.
Mm-hmm.
He's been around.
Yep.
But he'll get his out and have his little leather-bound notebook, and make some observations regarding the audience here. So.
Now that is coming, you're not going to be writing the entire way through this performance, are you? You'll miss the actual performance itself. And I sort of like put my hand out gently, not stopping you writing, just sort of put my hand out and say, after all, the theatre isn't something you can dissect and you can examine like a patient in a hospital. It's something you have to experience in the moment.
Well, you may observe what happens on screen or on the stage. Sorry. I like to observe the theater of the humankind in the audience.
Oh, I see. So what observations have you arrived at so far? I mean, you couldn't ask for a better display of the various different classes mingling together. I mean, look, we've got a fellow down there who looks positively working class, mixing with their betters here and there.
It does look like a good selection of the good people of London. But we'll see.
Indeed. Cigar?
No.
Okay.
We will get out a little wine and have a little sniff of cocaine and offer it to Clinton.
Well, and it's a little early in the evening, but thank you very much, Thaddeus.
And as he settles in, he'll get out one of his Egyptian cigarettes and light it, and just sit and wait.
Mm-hmm. Yep. As we cut the cigars and light up, the theater doors are closed. Everyone is in, and the play begins. I do have access to the entire written play for this. Not this particular thing, because as you know from the playbill, this has been adapted from the original, but I do have the original, quote unquote, original play in full text form. However, I will not be reading a book to you today. So, we'll be going by descriptions more than the exact lines, because I'm only one man. I cannot perform.
I was half hoping you would bring out the puppets and kind of like enact it.
Yeah. Okay. So the curtain parts and the play begins. The Queen and the Stranger, Act 1, Scene 1. A palace, a balcony. On a couch, once opulent and now faded and threadbare, reclines the Queen Casilda. Behind her, twin suns appear on the sky of a painted backdrop. Clinton, you note the particular backdrop painter, very good. Even from this distance, you can, and with the aid of your binoculars, you can pick out the details. And you particularly like the brush strokes, which at first you're like, that seems rough because you can see the stroke. But when your eyes sort of like settled into it, it makes sense. And there's a beautiful edge to the roughness.
So under my breath, I'll be like, oh, splendid. It's almost like he's adapted his brushwork for the precise lighting of this venue. Splendid.
So the twin suns appear on the backdrop of this balcony scene, and Queen Casilda's two sons and her daughter enter the scene. The four discuss matters of succession, although no one is named and no one calls another by name. So they all speak as you would do as a family. People don't use each other's names because it is presumed that they know who each other are. The sons argue and they complain to their mother, but Casilda does not give them the attention that they would wish, and in the end she wearily brushes them brushes them off and dismisses them. This particular talk seems to be one that they've had many, many times before. There's a sort of a feeling of ennui, of going through the motions. That the actors bring this across very effectively. There's a sort of like lethargy to everything that is discussed, and you think maybe the ladies, so Queen Casilda and her daughter, you think maybe they're a little bit better at this whole acting thing, though that is entirely up to you to figure out in like going forward. But at this stage, it seems like their delivery is better. So the curtain closes on this scene, which seems to highlight the fact that nothing changes there. They discuss succession ad nauseum. Act 1, Scene 2. The curtain opens, and also if you have comments, questions, like you can obviously just stop me and have a chat.
At some point, I'll have leaned over to Thaddeus and I'll say, "Well, it's all very interesting. I didn't reckon much to the young man's acting, although I think young Mr. Keith playing the younger son. There's a certain." It's rough, I grant you, but there's something about his delivery that I find quite compelling. I wonder if we get to meet any of the actual actors after the performance. I do hope so. Oh, sorry, the curtains are going up again.
Yep. So whoosh, the curtains part on Act 1, Scene 2. The palace, Casilda's receiving room. The queen stands at a long table, and she reads aloud from a scroll the names. She reads aloud from the scroll. It seems to be some kind of report on matters of state, and the scroll, through her delivery, names this city where this palace is as Ithil, and her kingdom as Hastur. And there is talk of a war that goes on against the kingdom of Alar. I'll put all of these names in chat for your convenience. So and then enemy kingdom. It seems from the reports that this conflict has no end in sight at all. And while Casilda goes through the various instances of hostility and maneuvering and the tragedies involved in this conflict, there's a child that enters, fingers laden with jewelry, and it is unclear to you if he's another of the queen's sons, although he talks with her with a certain familiarity, which leads you to presume so, maybe. And it seems like at some point he even tries bullying the queen. The two speak of Carcosa, a wandering, dreamlike city, which is a place of several unusual aspects. It appeared overnight. It is either on or beyond the waters below the palace. Holly, the towers of the city slip behind the moons at night, and on seeing the city, no one knows its name. A fifth singularity that no one speaks of. And if you have read some more, let's say, speculative fiction, or maybe a bit of the the old weird fiction. That's very much a niche thing at the moment, but there are several authors laboring in relative obscurity, but they produce quite the lurid and weird fiction, and this starts veering into that quite quickly in this particular scene. So there's a fifth singularity that no one speaks of, and then Casilda sings a fairly lengthy song. There are many stanzas, and you can tell the actor is pretty good at singing, which isn't always the case necessarily. So she sings a song about Carcosa's fate, and at the end, the priest, Nautalba, enters. The priest eyes the child with distrust, but it becomes apparent from the way that they're moving around on stage and discussing matters. It seems like the queen has no power to dismiss the child, even though the child is very much a problem. It seems the characters seem to be struggling to sort of act around the child. The priest, Nautalba, describes uncertainty out in the city. He brings a verbal report of the matters. A stranger, it seems, has arrived, an unheard of event. No strangers come to Ithil. And the curtains close again. So yeah, we can have a chat after each of these acts.
So I lean over to Thaddeus and I'll say, Thaddeus, what do you make of the? Is the child actually played by a child, or is it played by an adult?
Yes, it's a child actor. Yeah,
so
it's not mentioned on the cast list.
I'm assuming that's a fairly unusual thing at this sort of juncture.
Yeah.
So I lean over and I say, I must say that it's a brave choice casting an actual child on stage, but I'm not entirely sure what role the child occupies in this performance beyond a source of discomfort to the other characters. Well, you're more of a student of human nature than I. What do you make of the whole thing? And this stranger they're talking about.
I do not know. It seems to be a layered play with what is presented and what is not being presented.
Yes, it's odd as well. A lot of these terms they're using. I seem to remember maybe catching a glimpse of them in some of the smaller press works, but they're not really explaining them. And most stories are at least somewhat grounded in the familiar, so the audience can identify with the work, even if you then later lead them into flights of fancy. Whereas this seems to have focused on the odd and unusual from the start. I mean, it's a brave choice by the playwright, although
most plays seems to be a lesson in morality.
Well, indeed, and I suppose perhaps this stranger represents a destabilizing impact on the status quo. I mean, you heard them saying no strangers ever come to their kingdom. Perhaps it's perhaps the moral of the story is going to be a lesson about the dangers of falling into a routine and the unchanging nature of certain people's lives.
Did you know the original play?
Well, I don't believe the original was a play as such. As far as I recall, this is the first time it's actually been put on stage. I think the original is perhaps a written work. Like I said, I only really heard of it in passing at one of the functions I attended before I left Paris, and it was literally only a passing mention. But the name Carcosa sort of stuck in my mind, and obviously when I heard they were doing a performance of it over here, and I happened to have the fortune to be over here, but I couldn't pass up the opportunity to see what all the fuss was about, could I?
Oh, I mean, it could be. It could be inspired by the works of Herr Freud or Herr Jung, and they play with the it and the ego and the shadow. But we will see.
So as I'm
Do
sort
you
of
know this Mr. Talbot Estus?
No, I've heard. I've not had the pleasure myself, but I'm hoping we'll get an opportunity to meet him after the performance. As I'm sort of looking around the audience, Johannes, how do the rest of the audience appear to be sort of like responding to this play? Because obviously, I'm quite interested because it's an artistic expression, but I know a lot of people don't share that interest. They're probably just here to have like a good time and let's see a simple morality play, like Thaddeus was suggesting. So I'm just, as we're waiting for the next act, I'm just going to be sort of having a quick look around, seeing like how the rest of the audience are reacting. You know, are they listless or some of them sort of shifting about a bit?
Yeah, you see several couples of people probably having a little bit of the same kind of discussion, being like, so what do you think this is like? What are we talking about here exactly? So there is, because this is fairly a rapid pace with the act. Like the scenes within the act, rather, because they only close the curtains long enough to change a bit of the setting and then continue on. So there's not a lot of time to assess this, but you see some of the folks being like perturbed by, so this isn't what I like. I'm used to a different kind of flow of things, and this isn't that. Do you agree that sort of discussion you can even hear just being had close by?
I probably start to mention after Thaddeus, then like the curtain starts opening, and I'm sort of like, oh, and I turn back to look at the stage.
Yeah. And for this, I will not be reading the scene. However, I will give you handouts for this, which I will ask you to read. And like, put up your hand when you've read it. You don't. It's not a competition, so like take as much time as you need to. But I will put these out.
Yeah, we're not even an hour in, and he already gave us homework.
Yeah. Welcome to the horror, I guess.
Yeah.
Mate, I've just been reading that fucking massive Nyarlathotep. Don't talk to me about homework in games.
that is a thesis. Yeah, so I've put down the handouts for you, so please do read those. Yep. So just waiting on John to come back from grabbing a drink. Alrighty then. So we've read the scene, and right after the stranger, let me check who was the actor again. Cast list. So The stranger, played by one Michael Gillan, throws up his hands and reveals the yellow sign painted on his robes, on the sleeve, and coming across the robes across his chest. Let me pull up the. It's going to be in the background. This isn't the handout per se, but it's going to be in the sort of like the map area of Roll20. So as soon as there we go. So the yellow sign is painted on his robes, and immediately after he throws up his hands, the sign is visible to everyone in the theater. There's a slight a wave of this sudden, like, sort of because the play has been subdued in many different ways up until now, and when the stranger throws up his hands, the motion and the sign combine to send this sort of like wave of like in the theater, and immediately afterwards the curtains close and the scene ends.
I'd have probably like leaned forward as he sort of went like that, because I'm like, oh, here we go, it's getting good. Then as the scene closed, I'm like, well, I must say, Thaddy, the playwright certainly has a flair for the dramatic and the cliffhanger.
Also, please, both of you, make the first roll of the campaign. Sanity roll.
Here we go. Oh, doesn't appear to want to do it. All right, mine doesn't appear to want to roll for some reason. I'm not sure why.
Well, you can get my roll, and I'll just make a new one.
Is the editing thing?
No, I've already checked it. Although there is a way you can set it so you. I think I know what it is. Just give us a second.
Yeah. And we're in no hurry, so we can just figure this out. So for anyone watching, we're using the really fancy sheets that can be found in Roll20. That's so that is a success then, I guess, probably, because it's unless you are not well.
No, I've got sanity 25, so
yeah. Okay, so so Thaddeus fails the roll. So Thaddeus, you find the play, you now realize, energizing and moving, and you are free, of course, to figure out like what and how that works. But that's the sort of feeling that it generates within you right now as the play goes into the intermission stage. So there's a bit more light in the hall now, and the curtains stay closed, and from like it's apparent to you this isn't a surprise that there's an intermission now. So it's a play in 2 acts, and in the middle there's an intermission, and you have a bit more time to talk.
Well, let that be a lesson to everyone. Do not take cocaine when you go to see a play.
And I have now got my sanity thing working.
Yeah, it looks drastic. The roll that you made.
I'm not entirely sure if like my sanity score is correct, but I'll just roll with it for now.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
It's based on power. What is your power?
50.
And it should be 50.
All right. Okay.
Yep.
So there we go. Boom.
Yeah, but we're still good because the roll is 20. So roll 20. Hey. Okay. So intermission time. You can hear a lot of chatter in the hall. So please discuss amongst yourselves if you have.
That is making copious notes, being energized by this play, and can see many tie-ins to the theories of Jung and Freud, and some of his own. And he's making notes, and he's kind of like half keeping note on the couple that left. Did we manage to pick up of what type they were? Were they
What social class you mean?
yeah, social class?
I would say sort of lower middle class.
I probably sort of like half glance across at Thaddeus's notes, but it's a bit dark to be like really reading them.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I'm just actually glad that he seems to be interested in it. I was expecting him to sit there bored, not really get involved, and I was just like, oh, I'm just sort of doing my best, because he's like my brother-in-law. But now I'm like, oh, actually, maybe like some part of his soul, maybe like some part of the soul of a poet's like hiding in there deep down, because he seems to be like really getting into this. So I'm like, oh, yeah.
And he suddenly gets up, shuts the book. We need to speak to some of the audience members.
And as you say that, and Clinton, you're like, what?
Yeah, I'm like, what? the next act's about to start, Daddy.
Yeah, so they're preparing for the next act, and that is like, we need to discuss. And as you look around, you, Clinton, to gesture that they will begin the act when they are ready, I guess. And Thaddeus, you look for, I suppose, interview candidates. You see in the audience, there are some who seem to be overcome with like mild hysterics, like across the hall, and you can hear from, like, you can't really pinpoint it, but someone is sobbing somewhere in the audience, with like muffled sobs coming out of one of the rows.
This is like sweet music to him, so he will write down and ignore.
No, I was going to say, I'll have started to say, oh, they're about to stop. Then when we hear the sobbing, I'll be like, oh, we should also probably go and have a look. Not for the same reason as Thaddeus, but just because I'm like, oh, if someone's in distress, well, one, that they might be in serious, they might need some help, and two, they're going to disturb the damn play for everybody else. So, we probably should go. So I'll sort of go, but Thaddeus, they're going to stop the next. Then as he starts walking away, I'll just sort of sigh and get up and follow him.
Thaddeus, you approach. Let's say you try and follow the sobbing. You pinpoint it to, there's let's say there's a young man. You would put the age maybe around 18, somewhere there, and blatantly his father and someone else, some other man, they've gotten up from their seats and they are discussing. They're standing in the sort of the walkway that like goes through the aisles so that you can access the stage. They're standing in the open, and they have their arms crossed, and their voices are rather loud, and they are discussing this play in less than appreciative turns of phrase, and you get the impression that they are doing this to sort of like seek support for their opinions from the crowds. That's why they are using very high volumes. This play seems to be... They will put anything on a stage these days, one of them says, and the other is sort of agreeing, and also like keeping one worried eye on his son, who is apparently overcome with something that he's weeping.
I will just butt in. He will be like, members of his class who just used to people doing what they are told. So
while you're doing that, I'll check that the child is okay.
Oh yeah, he seems to be just inconsolable. It doesn't. He's not like ill or anything. But
I'll just be trying to do that sort of like soothing, sort of soft voice talk. To distress children. Whatever. Like, now that the young fella, there's no need for all this. It's just a play. There's nothing to get upset about. And like you say, he's inconsolable. So I'll be half keeping an ear out to like as Thaddeus sort of like bulldozes his way into this conversation.
Good evening, gentlemen. I am Thaddeus Morgan, renowned alienist.
Well,
That is a doctor, in case you're wondering.
yes, yes, of course. And
I would
as
like to offer you, and he gets out his pocketbook
Mhm.
and remember what it was. So he gives them, I guess, £1.
Mhm.
This is as a recompensation for your ticket, and he hands them a calling card, business card.
Yeah.
Please do seek out my medical expertise, and I will do my best to help your boy, free of charge, of course. Don't worry about it. It will be at the house, as they say, I believe. And
Yeah.
he smiles and puts the pound note and
Mhm.
the calling card into the elder gentleman's hand.
Yeah. They
And
have a
maybe you should go and have a drink at I believe there's a good pub nearby.
yeah. And that helps. They will have this like very rapid exchange where the father of the inconsolable son is like, no, my boy is very. There's nothing wrong there, and his sort of disgruntled companion just elbowing him is like, he's giving us £1. We could have drinks instead of this trash. And they they conclude their search for support in their opinions that this play is absolute trash and that no one should look at this, and they instead gather, thanking you, Clinton. The father like taps you on the arm as if to say, like, signal like, I appreciate.
Not at all, and I offer him
Yeah.
and his companion one of my fine Parisian cigars, the little tiny ones.
Yep. So the men seem to be in much higher spirits now that they have been given money to go and get drinks, and you've given them cigars, and they will gather the boy, and they will depart with the quickness.
Just to make sure,
Mhm.
he will get out another business card and write on the back.
Mhm.
He write gratis and kind of like, oh, free of charge on the back. Please
Mhm.
call, and put
Mhm.
that in the boy's waist pocket.
Yep.
Please, you would be greatly assisting me in my research if you would allow me to help him. Examine him, if you will.
Mhm. Yeah. You have gained all of their ears for whatever you wish to say on this. So they will take the cards, they will take the money and the cigars. They will leave, and will leave you to the play, I suppose. There's on the very other side of the, because you went following the sobbing, you perceive now being like done with this. On the other side of the theater, there's a group of, you presume, friends maybe, who are leaving, and one of them clearly doesn't want to. There's a woman that's basically being escorted by her friends out of this play, and they disappear out of the doors leading to the lobby.
I say, Daddy, this is a curious business, and no mistake.
It is.
But you make
It
us
is.
a boy sobbing, and that woman over there, she seems almost in a fit of
Yes.
apoplexy.
The human spirit is a mysterious thing. And he kind of takes out a handkerchief and cleans the seat where they were sitting and sits down here.
Mhm.
Very interesting. And he takes out his notebook and jots down some notes on this.
I sort of start to like half-heartedly protest about the fact we've paid for like good seats back there, and these are like ones down here, and then I'm like, do you know what? It doesn't matter. At least he's out and he's interested in the play. He seems engaged, so I'm just going to sit down next to him, light up another cigar, and like, lift my binoculars up and wait for the next act.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty then. So, the second act and the final one. The Queen and the Stranger, Act 2, Scene 1. The curtains open. A room in the palace that has been taken by the stranger. The surroundings are severe. One by one, the principals come in to talk to him. Thale, which these names are available in the casting list for you to reference, like who these people are. So Thale wheedles and threatens in order to try and gain the stranger's help in pressing his own suit for the throne. Watt tries to bargain with the stranger to gain support for his own claim. Camilla wants nothing. She says she wants to listen to learn something from the stranger, but then she does not listen and speaks of Ithel's troubles instead, like spilling her heart out to the stranger. Casilda comes in, starts to treat the stranger as an enemy, but then suggests an alliance, even a marriage of convenience, between whatever the stranger represents and the royal house, which is hers. Finally, the child comes in and stands mutely. And at this point, you realize that the stranger has not said a word. There are no lines for the stranger in this scene. Each of these royal representatives of Ithel come in, they plead their case or whatever it is they might do, and the stranger says nothing throughout all of this. The child comes in and stands mutely, not saying anything, much like the stranger. Then the lights go down and the curtain closes on the scene.
So, Daddy, what do you reckon to those the child and this stranger fellow? It seems odd that characters of such obvious importance to the production of the play should have no lines in it. After all, it is somewhat of a tradition that the main stars, the bigger leads, so to speak, tend to have more dialogue. And yet, I don't think I've heard a word escape either of their lips during the performance. So it's certainly a bold statement, but I'm not really sure what to make of the whole affair, if I'm honest.
What? He seems to be snapped out of his own thoughts.
The boy and this stranger, they barely seem to have said a word. It just seems odd to me.
Sometimes it's not what you say, but what you don't say.
Indeed, but I can understand were they taking some form of action that rendered speech unnecessary, speaking through their actions, as it were. I've seen that in performances before, but the stranger is simply sitting there while the principal roles are talking at him. I suppose that the stranger could be representative of the audience, and they're pouring out the backstory to us via the stranger. But in which case, what purpose the child?
He just nods. Make some notes.
And I sort of lean forward a little bit and stare at the curtains, almost as I'm trying to see through the curtains to get some idea of what's going on, but just waiting for the next act to start.
And it does. Act 2, Scene 2. A masked ball is taking place at the palace balcony. The guests are finely dressed, intricately masked, and they move to music played by the small house orchestra. You can see the house orchestra to the side, very modest in size, but they do play pleasant music tunes. And there are some extras on stage now, standing in for the guests, so to speak. So there are unnamed actors now performing roles with no lines or anything. It takes a moment for you to see the stranger He wears a bone-white mask and moves stiffly and without gaiety. Whereas everyone else on the balcony, they're dancing, they are joyous. After a while, the revelers begin to take off their masks. Their eyes look bright, and their actions are extravagant. Every motion is larger, more elaborate than it needs to be. Everything exaggerated in their movements.
You probably just hear me under my breath, Thaddeus, go, here comes the melodrama.
They are unrestrained. The stranger keeps his mask. Rather, he wears no mask. He grasps the queen, Casilda, by the arm, and she collapses dramatically in his arms. Another figure appears in tattered robes. It is the king in yellow. He is large. You suppose, Clinton, that he's probably wearing some stilts. They are not huge, but there's probably some stilts going on here.
Either that, or perhaps they've got someone suffering from some form of giganticism. I have heard of such people being used in dramatic performances before, and I sort of lean closer, sort of trying to get a bit better look.
Mm-hmm. So the king in yellow is large, and he holds forth a sword and a torch. And the torch is not lit. There is no fire, but there is smoke erupting from the torch. He talks with the queen and the priest, now Talba. The revelers, still on stage, give commentary on what is happening between the actors, on the main actors. And it is clear from their comments that everyone has now seen the sign, and everyone must wear a mask. Ithil has become Carcosa, and they are no longer entirely human. The king disappears. Out of the crowd of fear-stricken guests runs the child. He goes to the stranger, who himself has fallen to the ground, and taking him by the hand, follows in the wake of the king. As the play ends, the audience, including your good selves, are overcome with some confusion as the final lines of dialogue, there's more. After the king, the stranger, and the child have departed the stage, there are more lines, but the dialogue somehow peters out and is distorted and lost, and you don't quite know where what happens, what is being said. It is very confusing, and the curtains close and the play ends. And after the curtain falls, suddenly everything is in uproar. It's almost as if a spell has been lifted from the audience. Thaddeus, you you lose 3 points of sanity as a result of your fail earlier, which isn't enough to send you into, as far as I remember from the previous edition rules, it is not enough to give you any kind of temporary insanity, but still, you lose 3 points of sanity, and there is a lot going on in the audience. Let me refer to my notes. So there are a couple of, and please feel free to then get in with your own reactions, but a couple of gentlemen rush the stage, whereby they're met at the stage by stagehands, and there's a fist fight that's going on between the stagehands and these couple of gentlemen who rush the stage. There are agitated audience members just assaulting one another. One gentleman has the walking stick, is just beating the person who's sitting next to them. There's a woman trying to claw the eyes out of someone, and there are yells and chaos. People are leaving. What do you do?
My God, Thaddeus, everyone seems to have quite taken leave of their senses. What on earth's going on? Granted that it wasn't the greatest play I've ever seen, but there's no need for this sort of behaviour. It's like everyone's forgotten themselves and become beasts for a moment. Look, I've got to try and get back to the stage. People might try and assault the performers. And look at that woman over there.
He makes a final note, no mask, and closes the notebook and gets up. Indeed.
Yep.
And my plan's to sort of try and make my way towards the stage just to make sure the performers are okay.
Yep.
I'm going to try and circle in the way to go past this woman who's trying to claw the eyes out of someone, like just try and like give her the good old like slap around the face, like, madam, restrain yourself.
Yeah.
that sort of deal.
Yep. So you go and deal with the rush that meets you as you go into the aisle to head down towards the stage, to see if that everything's okay there, because people are leaving now because there's a brawl going and they don't want to get hit with sticks or
I'll
they're
be trying to like push through the crowd with my own walking sticks. And
so you
careful.
So you head towards the stage. The stage hands. It's a weird sort of like wrestling or like a punching match between the stage hands and then these two gentlemen who seem to be just furious. No one's being extremely hurt. However, punches are exchanged. So you dive in. There's no need for us to roll anything on this
I
because
just feel like going behind one and like trying to like, wrap him over the back of the head with like my walking stick.
Yep. And as you do, he like leans forward, like steadies himself on the stage, and is
control
quite
yourself, man.
Yep. He is shaking his head, trying to recover from the blow. The other stage, there's a stagehand grappling with the gentleman who's still trying to get at the stage, and I think there's it's one of those cases where they're sort of wrestling, standing up, and then the stagehand trips the gentleman and just like pins him to the ground and tries to tell him that, sir, you must restrain yourself, and just sort of wrestling him to the ground where he stays.
I'll sort of take out I don't know, like a hip flask with like some whiskey in or something like that, and I'll try and like both the man who's like, oh, well, just hit me on the back of the head, and like the other man, try and give them both like a tot of like the whiskey or whatever, and be like, go, come on, man, pull yourself together. There's no need for this unruly behavior.
The pinned audience member. How is his facial expression when he's been pinged?
He is still angry. He's trying to wrestle his way up.
I'm quite a large fellow, so basically, not to like cause him any damage or anything, I'm just going to put my foot on the center of his back and sort of lean some of my weight on it with the aim of like, I don't want to hurt you, but while you're down there, you're not hurting anyone else. So I want to keep you there until you've like regained your senses, whatever's happening.
Yep.
I'm like, Thaddy, what are you're the alien. You're the man of science. What do you make of all this? People seem to have quite lost their faculties.
Yes. How is he dressed, the angry man?
Seems to be a fairly well-to-do gentleman, so dressed in quite an expensive suit.
I put my hand on the stagehand. Try to ease up.
Also, Clinton is standing on his back as well. So.
Yeah, if Thaddy says that ease up, I'll sort of very gingerly take my foot off his back.
Yep. So the stagehand's like, he tried to take my head off.
Yes. So comport yourself, old chap. Are we there? And he snaps his fingers in front of his face.
He's muttering curses and like short sentences like "I'll get you," as he's trying to like push himself up. But the stagehand has like one of his legs which he's holding up, so he's sort of like can't quite move properly.
This is peculiar. Maybe more. Let me try something else. And he opens his wrist coat and takes out his pistol. And
there's no need for that, Fatty.
The stagehand hasn't realized this yet because he's holding on to the bucking leg of this gentleman.
Sir, and he sits down close to the man and pokes his cheek with the muzzle of the pistol.
Mm-hmm.
Would you control yourself now? This is really unbecoming of a man of your stature. Please, sir. Does he seem?
Yeah, as he starts to realize that there's a barrel being pressed into his cheek, he does like lay off the twitching so much, and like cause he's in a very awkward position because he's on the ground, but the stagehand is lifting his leg up, so he's sort of like raising his arms as he can.
Okay, Thaddeus gets up and removes the pistol. It's okay, my good man, and pats the stagehand on his shoulder. Just let him go. Let him go.
Okay. Yeah, the stagehand lets go of his leg. He goes crashing down. And the man gets up, and you can see where you think he's maybe bit his cheek or something. He's licking some blood from in the inside of his mouth, and he seems to you. You've seen agitated people before. His pupils are a little bit dilated. His body language is quite aggressive, but he's just sort of like standing there, sort of idly, just moving his limbs a little bit, and starts taking steps back very slowly.
Okay, I like to make. I think it's called psychology. I'm trying to find it.
It's, I think, on the right side of the sheet.
There we go. I like to make a psychology roll to see if he seems just naturally agitated or influenced by, maybe drugs or something like that.
Yeah.
So I just click it.
Yes. He is manic. He has been overcome by mania. He is. You can see from the movement of his eyes. His brain activity is going haywire. Is what's going on. You don't know that because you're not a modern scientist, but you know that these are signs of mania in people.
I am an alienist. How will have you? Okay, he puts the pistol away, and in a calm voice says, "Okay, we're all men of the world here. I'm sure we can. Bygones be bygone, yes, and we'll make sure to get you some." Clinton, you had a flask of whiskey, yes?
Okay, yes, Daddy, it's here.
Maybe a little pick-me-up.
And I sort of hold it out to the fellow.
Mm-hmm.
A good stiff drink will do you wonders.
He grabs it, and I think he stares at the stagehand throughout as he drains the hip flask in its entirety, tosses it back to Clinton, kind of like aggressively.
Okay.
And he picks up his hat from the floor and he turns to leave.
Oh, wait a minute, good sir.
He does not stop at your word.
Insolent fellow. Damn, he drained all my whiskey. That cost a pretty penny. I'll tell you that for nothing, Daddy.
He's torn. Wait a minute, Clinton. And he doesn't like it because, as we know, a gentleman will walk, not run, but he will pick up pace
Mm-hmm.
and follow this refined man out of his wits.
Yeah. Yeah, you're able to. He doesn't run, so you can catch up to him easily.
Look, I understand we all had experience various stages of shock. Perhaps you would allow me, and he produces one of his calling cards.
Mm-hmm.
It would be of great assistance to my research. I'm sure you understand. Maybe some help for you.
As you give your spiel, he like grabs the card from you like this. So he basically like gets the card, crumples it in his fist, and keeps going.
Okay.
He doesn't reply.
In the meantime, while Thaddeus has been doing this, I'm going to be talking to the now free stagehand, and I say,
Mm-hmm.
have the performers managed to get away from here?
The curtains closed, and no one managed to get beyond the curtains. So presumably they will have. No one's gotten to them because they exit through the back anyway. So,
if it's at all possible, you may know me. I'm the renowned Parisian artist Clinton Hardy. I was rather hoping to achieve an audience with the playwright after this sterling piece. I understand if it's not at all possible, but if you could arrange such a meeting, I'm going to slide him over a few pound notes as I'm saying this. Of course, I would be incredibly grateful.
Yeah, he takes the notes and says, "Oh, very gracious of you." And he's helping. The other stagehand is there as well. They're both helping the fellow who you bopped in the head with the cane. They're helping.
I'll help.
Yeah, so they're basically like having him sit down against the edge of the stage because he is very sedate now because you hit him in the head. So he's being like sat down by these.
I sort of like I go like that with my flask, and then I'm like, oh, it's empty. I'm like, do either of you have a strong drink, some brandy, a port, or anything like that to bring the family around?
The stagehand says, "There's we can see about that later. There's the bar in the lounge, so don't you worry about it, sir." Very gracious, and like puts the notes away and says, There was supposed to be at least the reception afterwards, and they share a look. The stagehands and you can read plainly as day that they're like, probably not going to happen now. And the stagehand talking to you turns back to you and says, "There was supposed to be a reception, but given that a lot of the audience is left and this."
I quite understand my fine friend. I quite understand that. My brother-in-law, you may see him over there, is the renowned doctor Thaddeus Morgan, renowned in the field of alienism, and I'm somewhat known in artistic circles myself. Perhaps if we were able to gain a meeting with the playwright, perhaps we might be able to furnish some sort of explanation as to what has gone on here, as to why all these people seem to have quite lost their wits at the conclusion of the play. I've never seen anything like it.
Yes, I wouldn't know anything about that, sir.
Well, I must meet this playwright and congratulate him. I mean, rarely have I seen a piece of such short length that is so visibly moved people and created such a reaction amongst the audience. I simply must meet this maestro of the playwright's craft.
Yes, and well, it it is not in my power to make it so, sir, but the reception was supposed to happen in the lobby, and I think even if it is not, you should be able to find the and let me get his title here. So the manager, the theater manager, Mr. Noble, should still be there for you to talk to, but unfortunately, we need to. There's someone will have called, probably Mr. Noble. Someone will have called the police. So we will be remaining here with the gentleman, and they are looking after him because his eyes are all unfocused and he's kind of off.
Of course. Well, I'll head past the bar on the way to the lobby and see if I can send someone down with that stiff drink for him. And my plan will be to walk up, like collect Thaddeus on the way. So tell him that I'm going to go try and speak to the theatre manager, Mr. Noble, in the lobby.
Yeah.
And then on the way past the bar,
yeah,
say, there's a man who's received a blow to the head who needs like a stiff drink down there, and I'll give him like a few pound notes. Like, oh, there you go, there's a payment for the drink, whatever he needs.
Yep.
I'll say two of the stage hands are with him, but he needs a good stiff drink to bring him around. And unfortunately, actually, I'll get him to like refill mine.
Yeah.
While I think about it.
Yeah, stuck up. Yeah. So
in fact, just give me that bottle. One bottle for me, and one for the fellow down there. Whatever's left, give it to the stage hands. They deserve it. And have one yourself.
Everyone, it's party time.
I think Thaddeus will pick up a port while we're at the bar.
Okay, yeah. So you go away from the theater proper into the lobby, and you see, like, contrary to what the stagehand was supposing, yeah, they're laying out the reception. There is no one there. As far as the audience goes, you are the only ones, and there's the bar is there, obviously. So you go there, you get this sorted, and you get your drinks, and you see the staff, the cast, aside from Mr. Talbot himself. They're all there, looking quite sort of apprehensive and awkward, because there's little of the audience segment coming here because of whatever just occurred. But you can find all of the cast, except for the child, for obvious reasons that you wouldn't keep a child at the bar, and Mr. Talbot. Both of those are missing. Everyone else is there.
So I'm going to walk over to the cast, and as I get within like I don't know, 5-10 feet of there, I'm just going to give it like a splendid performance. You're all to be congratulated.
Yep, and they do take their bows. Mighty kind of you, sir, says, and let me get my
I will follow him, and I will sit at my port.
Here we go. The actors. So it is Jean, I guess, because we're in Britain town. So Jean Hewart says, "Mighty kind of you, sir."
Not at all. I've rarely seen an audience moved on such an emotional level as I have during your performance. I'm no expert in the field of plays, but I firmly believe you may have tapped into a previously hitherto undiscovered new media of the play. This shocker that you have displayed that has moved people down to their very core.
Yes, well, it certainly sounded like that, and she has her drink, for some champagne. We didn't, being behind the curtain as we were. What happened? we only heard some commotion.
While he's talking to him, I mean, Thaddeus will nod and give the the pleasantries, but he will
Mhm.
keep quiet. But he will observe instead and
Yep.
let the young Hardy talk.
I say, well, as at the close of the play, it seemed to me as though you somehow you touched a core of emotion deep inside most of the audience, I would say, and it was different for each person. Well, I saw a young child who was quite inconsolable. I saw grown men who did not look like they were theatre goers, who were gripped with an almost manic urge for action. I've watched a number of plays in my time, I assure you, and I have never in all my years seen such a display of unbridled emotion unleashed from an audience. A masterpiece. I'm almost lost for words. Splendid.
Would you like to, Clinton, make and let me refer here with the quickness that is not exactly quick. Either a credit rating or
Now we're talking.
yeah, I'm gonna guess it's gonna be credit rating because you
Money.
have a lot of that. So
Money.
I don't think you need to give him another option.
yeah, I think it's gonna be credit rating. Yeah, so yeah,
And he already had been pound notes.
yeah. It's been constant rain at the Scala. Yeah. So and this is credit rating is an interesting skill in that it has a lot of things in it. One of which is social standing, and in this instance, it's about how you comport yourself and what you project as far as that goes. And with your success, you project enough approachable confidence and I suppose the kind of sensibility that gives Miss Hubert a chance to approach a subject that she might not otherwise have, because you seem like the kind of person that she could talk to this about, and she sort of leans in and says, "Those are." Again, you have a surplus of kindness, good sir. She's around 20, thereabouts. Very pale, freckles, unfashionably long red hair, which that's quite. It stands out in a crowd, and she's not really the like you're not supposed to necessarily, and she definitely does.
As someone who has a certain unique look himself, I'll probably be sort of looking at a more of a sort of like with an artist's eye, like thinking like, oh, she might be a good model for an artistic piece because she's got like quite a unique look, and that's what I'm looking for in my art. I'm looking for something to like shock people's jaded taste, and that's probably why I think this whole thing is a masterpiece, because it shocked people out of their complacency.
And she gives you a smile and a laugh. She seems very sort of lively, I guess, bubbly sort of person. Now that she's feeling pretty good about your praise and your presence, because you project this pleasant image of yourself. And she takes a sip of her drink and says, there is definitely something about this play. It is I don't quite know what it is, and not being a playwright myself, can't really comment on that, but there's I'm not surprised to hear that you think it touched people, and we know that it touched people. We heard the commotion, and now you stand here telling me that this is a universally reaction-provoking thing, and for us, I think it's probably the same. She lowers her voice a bit and says, it's touched us too, I think, with the production crew, us, the actors. I've been it's not unusual per se. But I've been having some dreams about this play, particularly. It happens sometimes. You prepare around the clock. You memorize the lines. You become the character, and sometimes it
you're
stays with you.
inhabiting the role. I
Yes,
quite
yes.
understand.
And
You could see that from your performance on stage.
and again, thank you. And sometimes these things just stay with you past the the midnight hour, so to speak. And I've, well, it's not. It is strange because there are elements here from the script prepared by Mr. Estes that stay with me in the time that I lay in bed, and it's because we have the role of the king. Yes, you see the tattered figure, the one with the robes. Yes,
and like I say, I'm like size 75, so I don't know what that makes me in relation to. Like
you can determine that, but you can be the most of that if you want to.
So I'm going to say yes, that slightly tall fellow who you had playing the king. Tell me where. I mean, I'm no shrinking violet myself, but wherever do you find such a tall fellow? Or was it achieved by some manner of the artifice of the play?
Yes. The king is played by Mr. Estes himself. Mr. Estes is not gifted with the prodigious, prestigious. Let's say that's easier for me to pronounce this evening. Prestigious. Tallness as yourself. However, it is a trick of the trade. There are wooden supports to attach to one's boots, and therefore gain increased height.
Well, it worked splendidly, and combined with the tattered clothes, which I presume cover these stilts.
Yes, very much so.
Quite the remarkable effect. Where is the esteemed Mr. Estes? I was rather hoping he'd be here and I could congratulate him.
I can't really say. I presume he is disposing of his wardrobe. It is my hope that he will be joining us, but it is difficult with the. Well, I suppose with the great artist, it is sometimes difficult.
Yes, I quite understand. My brother-in-law here, the renowned Dr. Thaddeus Morgan, you may have heard of him. He's quite the study of human nature and was entirely taken by your performance. And as someone who's not generally a big theatre-going man, I think that speaks volumes for the play itself. When is your next performance of the play, if you don't mind me asking?
Let me refer to the playbill. So,
I'm guessing tomorrow.
Yeah, because it's Monday to Saturday, according to the playbill. Cool. So, yes, as soon as tomorrow night. The schedule is fairly intensive, and we are so lucky to have this opportunity.
Oh, quite. Well, I will certainly be looking to attend tomorrow's performance, and if it would be possible when your run has finished at this theatre, I should very much like to host yourself and the cast to perhaps a small brunch as a show of my appreciation for this marvelous performance you have all put on for us this evening. I really cannot emphasize how much I've enjoyed myself this evening.
Miss Hewitt turns to some of the other cast. They are talking amongst themselves, and she was like, "Are you hearing this, George and and Hannah? We're to have a brunch on the gentleman's offer over here." Sadly, some of the only audience members to remain, but we seem to have made an impression, and they give sort of nods and mutter some pleasantries your way.
I make if Mr. Keith's there who played the High Priest, I make a few pleasantries with him, and I'll say, yes, I particularly enjoyed your performance as the priest when you entered the chamber of the stranger. I can certainly predict big things for yourself in the future.
He smiles. His manner is quite warm. However, he seems a bit, compared to at least yourself and well, Miss Hewitt here as well. He is not socially very adept, so he seems to struggle with like how to express that he acknowledges your compliment. So he ends up going for a very like sort of very short and clipped sort of like, yes, I appreciate that, and like a nod, and then that's it.
I turn back to the young lady that I've been talking to, Miss Hewitt, and I say, tell me, Miss Hewitt, and forgive me if I'm being a little too forward, but I must say that when you first came on stage playing the part of Camilla, I was struck by the gravitas that your appearance and your manner of movement lent to your role. I wonder, have you ever considered modelling for the arts?
Not really. And I think, and he, she leans in and sort of very gravely says to you with a lowered voice, like, I don't quite think Father would approve of that. It is already a bit of a struggle with the theater.
I see.
And also at this point, feel free to make. I think we're going to go for credit rating again. I think there were two options, and that's one of them. So let's go for that.
Hard success.
Yes. You success hardly, being Mr. Hardy. You now recall, because like she's giving a lot of weight to saying that like Father would not perhaps approve, and you're like, haven't I heard about the Hewarts? And you have. So Jean, you now recollect, must be a daughter of the Right Honourable Gordon, Lord Hewart, Lord Chief Justice of England. Yeah, and this hits you like a ton of bricks. You're like, oh, I remember now.
I'll pause for a few moments. There's something about like the cast of her profile, as I look at her from a certain angle, reminds she's got like maybe the same sort of cheek structure as Lord Hewitt.
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute, you wouldn't by any chance be Lord Hewitt's daughter?
She sort of like makes a motion with her hands, like, don't.
My apologies. Sorry, it was just the way you stood there in the light. It suddenly struck me. I must confess, I was so enamored of the play that I didn't make the connection.
Yes, and it is not a secret. However, I don't wish to bring Father into everything in my life, and it is already extremely difficult with his appointment 6 years ago, and I wish to. I don't wish to have him overshadow this to any more than it needs to. But it is by no means a secret. I want to have this for me. You understand? I'm sure.
I quite understand. My own family were not of an artistic temperament themselves, and somewhat disapproved of my moving into painting and literature. So I quite understand, my dear. However, I assure you, should you wish to step into the arena of modelling for the artist, my own work tends something towards what is known as the more abstract score. So and there are theatrical tricks. For instance, your King in Yellow, there are certain artistic tricks that one can use to convey the essence of the model without necessarily conveying the identity of the model.
Yes, well, that all sounds terribly interesting. I will make a note in my diary, and I will certainly. What did you say your name was?
Clinton Hardy.
Clinton Hardy. Yes, quite right. And she raises a toast and says, "Well, Mr. Hardy, I am.
Your good health.
I cannot say I'm entirely pleased with the evening's events, but
my dear, you should be ecstatic with the events. After all, one of the most difficult things for small plays like your own, in my understanding, is getting people to talk about the performance, since that brings in further people to see it. Given what has happened here this evening, no doubt word of your play will spread like wildfire. I should not be surprised if you did not double your takings on the following performances based on word of mouth alone."
she clearly had not even thought of this, and as she processes it and starts to agree with you, she is nodding and smiling vibrantly. It's like the sun rose in the lobby when she's smiling, and she says, "Well, that sounds fine." I think, Mr. Hardy.
I say, Thaddy, what do you say to the two of us coming back and viewing the play again on the next performance? Given your obvious interest and the effect on the audience, perhaps it might be a.
Yes, I would very much like that. And
splendid. It's good to see you taking such an interest. Oh boy.
Please
forgive me, Monsieur, that this is my brother-in-law, Thaddeus Morgan. I'm terribly sorry. How rude of me.
Well met, Doctor.
We did all the pleasantries. You mentioned something which is of a keen interest of mine, which is dreams. I am.
You now realize that she didn't realize that you also heard this, but you did, but she didn't realize.
Perhaps we could be of an assistant to each other, if you would consider it. I am. And I went blank.
Don't be modest, Thaddeus. Thaddeus here is one of the most renowned alienists in London. He specialises in treating people who have problems with dreams or unresolved issues. But he's too modest a chap to. He's often guilty of hiding his light under a bushel. But don't be modest, old fellow. Don't be modest.
I do have a clinic, so everything would be, of course, within propriety. So there will be no ill-conceived meetings or anything of the shady nature. But if you would consider it, I would be very much interested. And draws his secret weapon, his calling card.
Mm-hmm. She is happy to take your calling card. Yeah, she gets it, puts it in her purse. Yes, I shall ponder upon this for sure. I will absolutely have to consult with the family doctor, but
yes, you do that. I'm sure you can ask around to get my credentials. It shouldn't be difficult.
I think while Thaddeus has been sort of doing that, I'll have drifted off and I'll just be like chit-chatting with the rest of the cast, sort of pleasantries, finding out later, congratulating them all, toasting their health, all the sort of normal sort of pleasantries.
Yep. Okay, so let's take an overview of the cast, because now you see them as people instead of the characters. So Jean Hewitt is a young 20-something woman, pale freckles, the long red hair. Then we have George Keith, who is tall and handsome. He has broad shoulders, blue eyes, blonde hair, and a Scottish accent, which I do not have and can not mimic very well. We have Hannah Keith, who is George's wife. And she is older, at least by a decade, maybe two, than John Hewitt. However, she is a beautiful lady with pale blonde hair, wavy, strong features, and also a Scottish accent. We have Walter Paige, who is a sickly youth. He must be around 20 himself, somewhere there. Dark black hair, slim build. He has that sort of anxious air about him. He has a worried look on his face almost constantly. He stares at his feet a lot. And we have Michael Gillan, who is well preserved for his age. You estimate he's probably at least 60. He has gray hair. However, he moves quite stiffly, and you already saw this on the stage as well. The characters that he played move stiffly. You presume because of a condition that he has. Where was I? Yeah. So as you exchange pleasantries and give thanks to the performances and whatnot, Michael Gillan seems very warm in his manner. Very much the image of a pleasant older gent. He is.
I'll probably spend a bit of time talking with him, partly because he sort of reminds me of my old mentor, that pleasant sort of older gentleman sort of demeanor. Yep. So I'll probably linger a little bit longer chatting with him, about how he thought the play went, what his background in the theatre is, etc. Yep. A few old war stories off him. That's
And as you talk, you come to realize, because he just tells you these things, he's not really an actor at all, and you kind of figure, yeah, maybe that ties into the roles that he has in this. So to refresh, Michael Gillan played the stranger. Not a lot of talking lines with the stranger.
I'll pay him some compliments, saying that I wouldn't have guessed from his performance, and I thought, despite the fact that he didn't have a speaking role, I thought that he brought a lot of gravitas to his performance, and he was the linchpin around which the other cast orbited on the scenes that he inhabited.
Yep, he is very glad to receive these, though you can tell that he doesn't really like. He thinks you're being very polite to him. He doesn't really see himself as an actor per se, and he because you have plenty of time to talk here, and there's drink, there's some food. You come to learn that he's in the publishing business, and he used to be, he used to work for the English, the UK publishers of Talbot Estes' books before, which is where he met Talbot Estes, and which is why he's here. So he used to work for the. I have a name for this publishing house, if I can find it. There we go. So, oh no, they're the American publishers rather. So, yeah, he's from America, and he used to work for Doubleday, Doran & Co. and they published Talbot Estes' stuff in the States.
How do you
Which
say
is-
that again?
I'll put it in chat.
So yes, I would just be like making general pleasantries and chatting about like, oh well, is that how you met Mr. Estes and you came to be in this role?
Yep.
What was this? Was the manuscript for this play? Was it originally submitted to Doubleday Publishing before it became a play? And I'll just be trying to tease a bit of like the sort of the history of this play out of it.
Yep. No. The play is fresh. It hasn't been published anywhere. The play, he tells you, is Albert trying to adapt the French original into English, and it's Gillan says that it's sort of it's a side project of Talbot's trying to do this play thing, and that Talbot is mainly a fiction writer, so they publish books, and are you interested? Because he will rattle off.
Yeah,
his
I'll
bibliography.
I'll quite happily say I'm interested. I'm mainly interested in what sort of like fiction he writes. Because obviously, this has gone to sort of the weird sort of psychological angle. So I'm interested in whether his fiction sort of dovetails with that.
Yep. So, his most important titles, which is the ones that Mr. Gillan is going to bring forth. Let's go in chronological order. So his first, at least in Gillan's estimation, his first important work was called The Grey Lady. It was published in 1905, and it concerns a children's governess who poisons the children's mother and takes her place. The second on the timeline of important works is called The Haunting of Agatha Mae, M-A-E, published in 1912. It concerns a young woman who is the only one who can see what happened to the previous owners of a country home, a sort of psychic, mediumistic, seance type story. Third work is called The Curse of Daedalus. I'll put it in chat because that is a word. The Curse of Daedalus is or was published in 1921, and it is a story about a magician in a pact with a demon prince who plots the ruin of a famous family. Very steadily in the weird fiction with these. However, there's more to be said on that. Then the fourth one is called Evil Root, 1926. And it's a story about the eldest daughter who is possessed by the spirit of an Egyptian princess whose tomb was discovered by her archaeologist father. And the fourth one, published this year, the freshest fiction work, is called The Revenant King, 1928. It incorporates, you figure out in short order, some of the same themes as the play that you just watched. So there are, for example, there's the Casilda is there, the palace, lakes, that sort of thing. Seems to be in the sort of like same fictional framework, the book. And Mr. Gillan elaborates that Talbot characterizes his fiction in two separate categories. First one is romantic horrors, and the second category is macabre romance. So that's the sort of field where Talbot sees himself playing in. So yeah, you get all of this. Of course, he is very good at delivering this information because it's literally his work. From like he's retired now, but he used to do this for his work. So he's up with the information, very efficient.
Yeah, I'll be generally sort of nodding and sort of like humming along at the appropriate junctures, and as he's like reading off these books, you know, I'll be checking like which one of them are still being published, you know. And basically, my plan is after we've done this whole thing, I'm going to go and try and get hold of like a copy of these books and like read through them, see if I can sort of get a bit of an idea where like the inspiration for this fantastic plays come from. Especially, obviously, the last one, the Revenant King, because they said that sort of dovetails in nicely with the play.
Yep. So there's a lot of pleasant discussion to be had. Everyone seems pretty nice, and some of them like just outright very warm and sociable. Mr. Gillan, very much in that category. Miss Hewitt, again, right there. The couple, George and Hannah, seem to be, because they are married, so they're a little bit separate because they can just spend time by themselves off to the side. And of course, as mentioned before, George seems to be very socially awkward. And then we have young Mr. Paige, who just seems to be an anxious youth. He's nice to talk to. He's not rude. He's very cautious, very polite when talked to, but he seems to be much like George, not so good with just socializing with people. But everyone's pretty nice. The food is good. There's some like bite-sized stuff being served, and then the drinks as well. And it seems to be wrapping up when from the back emerges the maestro himself. Everyone's sort of like, oh, let's just gather these glasses over to the side then, because we're done. We didn't really get to see Talbot, but okay. And Talbot Estes arrives. I have a token for him. Unfortunately, I don't have art for all the NPCs in this, and there's some rhyme and reason to like who gets art, but some of it doesn't really, like some characters are way more weighty than the ones that they do get art for, which, okay. But there's a token to remind us of him. Whoop. Are the name lines visible to you on the tokens? That's interesting. Can you see the name under your own token?
I can see the name under mine, not under Thaddeus's. If you go into edit the tokens, there's like a bit where it says C, and it's got like a list of like all the different things. Yeah. And I think you have to like make sure all of those are ticked.
Okay. Oh yeah, name. Okay.
Yeah, I can now see it.
Yeah, cool. Okay, I will make that change first. Yeah, I didn't see that. That is very useful information. Here we go. Yep. So that is Talbot Estes. Okay, so his description. So Talbot Estes arrives wiping his hands, and he is tanned and active looking. He has a thick mustache and, like you see in the picture, full head of thick black hair, slicked back with some sort of ointment or what do they call the
Brill cream?
Yeah. So he looks pretty swish as far as that goes, and he has a sort of like Southern American accent, which as the fancy strikes me, I might try and imitate, but it's going to be bad. But let's see where it goes. So he arrives and fetches a glass of. He actually goes to the bar first and says, "Well, there, give me a glass of bourbon, your finest." Gets the glass. Sort of positions himself between you and the cast, and turns to you, gives you a smile, raises a glass, and says, "Thank you very much for coming, fellows. And please, first of all, can we have an applause for the cast? Splendid work they did." Yes. So it's a sad affair. You two clapping in the lobby for the cast, but see, he seems entirely unperturbed by this. He's in a mood to celebrate this, and let me.
I'm not surprised he wants to celebrate. He's probably going to be like the talk of London society tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. And after the applause, the cast, I think it's going to be Michael Gillan who says, and let us not forget the inestimable Talbot Estes, the playwright. Shall we have an applause?
Yeah.
And the cast applauds as well to Talbot Estes. He raises his bourbon and takes a sip. Too kind, my fellows. Let me refer my notes. You note that Michael Gillan positions himself immediately when Talbot enters and starts doing his thing. Gillan positions himself close to Estes, not like in a weird way, but he's definitely like makes an effort to stay close to Estes from now on, like whenever Estes is about. So he, as the raucous applause dies down, Estes, having taken his drink, licks his lip and says, "Well, I am pleased that you're here, and I would, for your sake, only two of you remain here, but I would still like to state that I am deeply sorry for what happened, and I deplore this display of violence. It is an affront to the arts, but as we know, all art," and he turns to his cast, who there's some nods. As we know, all art should seek to incite fervor and ardor in the witness. In that we have succeeded, my friends and collaborators and audience members as well. Unfortunately, this is how that happened tonight, but that is, I suppose, the danger inherent in our art form.
Well said, sir. Well said. And but you should not be apologising for the actions of others. It is the responsibility of the artist to touch something in the audience. It is their own faults, their own flaws writ large that causes them to behave in this manner. You are not responsible for how people behave when their emotions are stirred by your work. The role of the artist is simply to stir those emotions and then let people's nature take its course.
Very well said, Mr.
Apologies, how rude of me. Clinton Hardy, at your service, sir. At your service.
Yep, he comes on, shakes your hand. Mr. Hardy, I'm pleased that you stayed, and because you're very close to him now. Everything he does is like full of intensity. Like he's an intense man. His handshake, very like firm, and he squeezes a little bit too hard, and his body language as he makes statements more than he like discusses things. Yes, we all make our own path, and I'm glad that as you have now seen the play, I'm glad that mine has led here. I have made my humble adaptation from. This isn't my well, the translation is and the adaptation is mine, but the original remains with the French. A lovely people. They have produced the original Le Roi Un Jean. Don't know if you speak the French, but it is called
Mais
The
oui.
King in Yellow, the original, and he motions with his hand quite a bit as he talks. Takes a sip of his beverage. Says, I do not know if you're familiar with the original, Mr. Hardy.
I must confess, not I. I have heard mention of the original. I lived in the Loire Valley and Paris for some years, and in the circles I moved, I have heard of the original, but I never had the pleasure until this evening.
Oh, I doubt, Mr. Hardy, that many have heard of the original, much less read it. There's quite the story, and
I sort of lean closer and rapt attention. I go on.
Yeah, and he spins a yarn, and it takes a bit. His story is very dramatic. So during the time of the Third Republic in France, he says that there was a writer called Thomas de Castaing. I'll put it in chat, and I apologize for all French people for murdering all the pronunciation for everything French. So that's the author, he says, of the original. During the Third Republic, immediately after it was published, the Third Republic seized almost the entire production of the play, which was printed in a book format. It was almost entirely burnt, and he spends a good 15 minutes telling you about the surviving copies and the murders, the suicides, and the love stories that sprang from the journeys that these surviving copies took throughout different hands at different time periods. And he says, I was, during my time in Paris, that glorious, glorious city, I think everyone should aspire to go to Paris.
I quite
at least
agree.
once.
I quite agree, sir. I quite agree.
There's nothing quite like it. I was lucky enough to, and you see him start to say something. He stops himself. There's an instant of him like having an adverse reaction to something, and then he moves past it with the force of will that he's projecting out. Anyway, says, I thank my good grace that I arrived in such a time in Paris where I actually came across one of these originals. Luckily, it is no longer a banned work, for we are far beyond the barbarities of those days. But I happened upon an original copy and actually managed to procure it for myself. And it is a wonderful work indeed, Mr. Clinton. My cast has heard me speak of this many a time, and they have read my adaptation. So you will apologize, will accept their apologies for not engaging in deep conversation, for they are quite exhausted by my overtures on this matter.
Course. I entirely understand, sir. I entirely understand. The performance art is an exhausting pastime.
Yes, quite right. Quite right. Excuse me. he just leaves the conversation and goes to one of the windows and looks outside. He peers out of the window up, takes a good gander.
I also have a wander over, so like there seems a bit odd how he suddenly like stopped dead and went over to the window. And he's like, I'm going to sort of wander over behind him. I'm thinking, maybe he's been like overcome with exhaustion himself. He seems a little bit manic himself.
Mm-hmm. He's intense.
He's already said like, you know, he's been like putting the thumb screws down to like get the performance done. Maybe it's taken a bit of a toll on him. So I'll sort of go over with the idea of just like gently putting my hand on his shoulder and say, "You're quite all right, sir."
He like shakes a bit because he didn't expect this. He was entirely preoccupied with whatever he's doing.
I'm going
He
to
turns
see if I
back
can
and
like have a quick
Yeah.
look as I put my hand over, see if I can see what he's looking at.
nothing there. He turns around and says, sloshes his bourbon a bit in his glass and is like, "Oh, well, I say always, as it was with drink and writing also, waste not, want not," and he like slurps a bit of the bourbon off his hand and like shakes the rest and goes, I believe in the Slavic parts of Europe they take the drink and they pour some down for, I suppose, their ancestors. Curious ways. And he just like flings the droplets from his hand onto the carpet.
Like when he's not looking at me, I'm going to try and like meet Thaddeus's gaze, and I'll be like,
It's like, "Oh, get the cards out, man."
and in fact, if he seems to have recovered himself,
He's
I'm sort of in a way to sort of like, I've given Thaddeus the nod. I'm going to say, you must forgive me my rudeness. I got quite carried away with your performance. I must introduce my fellow theatre goer and my brother-in-law, no less, the renowned Dr. Thaddeus Morgan. Thaddeus, this is the esteemed author Talbot Estes Esquire, our host for this performance spectacular this evening.
Mr. Morgan, I hope you are enjoying our soiree.
I am. Very nice to meet you. I was curious, how did the premiere go?
I don't quite grasp your meaning, Mr. Morgan.
The premiere of the play.
Well, Mr. Morgan, you have just witnessed it.
I believe this was the premiere.
Yes.
You must forgive my brother-in-law. He's not as versed in the ways of the arts. But he is an expert in his field beyond reproach.
I understood it was running from Monday to my mistake.
Yes. Going forward, that is the plan. Yes.
So this is you didn't put it up in Paris?
Oh no! It is. I do not quite have the weight to my name yet as a playwright to charge, so to speak, the stages of Paris. But one starts from somewhere, and this was quite the start.
Indeed. So I understood your previous work, The Revenant King, had similar themes to the play.
Yes.
Was this your first inspiration?
My first and primary inspiration is, of course, the original play, Le Roi and Jean in the French. We all stand on the shoulders of giants. I am not different in that regard. Both The Revenant King and The Queen and the Stranger inspired both by the same original French. However, I would like to state for both of your interests, Mr. Hardy and Morgan,
Yeah.
I am indeed working on a more complete novelization of the original French. The Revenant King, while inspired in parts by the original French, I am intending to devote an entire work completely to a work in prose. It shall be forthcoming, and Mr. Gillan here will crack the whip and we shall get it published, hopefully within the next year.
Well, I should dearly love to read a copy of that work, and when it is published, and I'm sure indeed it will be if tonight's splendid affair is anything to go by.
Very much so. I shall have a first printing copy signed by me, signed by the cast. I shall have it delivered, hand delivered to you, Mr. Hardy.
You are too kind, Mr. Estes. Too kind.
Nonsense.
I shall treasure it. Thank you. That would mean a great deal to me. And as I was saying to your splendid cast, myself and Thaddeus will surely be in the audience for tomorrow evening's performance.
Wonderful, wonderful. I shall have a talk with Mr. Noble, the theater manager. I shall have something special here prepared for you.
Oh, again,
at no extra expense.
Too kind, sir.
Very well. I do believe there is a schedule to be kept, and he fishes out a timepiece.
As he's saying that, I'm going to sort of step in a little closer to him, sort of like put my arm on his shoulder, just in a very low voice that anybody like him, me, and Thaddeus can hear it. I'm going to say, I'd like to show my appreciation to your wonderful cast by delivering each of them a small gift ahead of tomorrow evening's performance. Would that be permissible? Obviously, I don't want to disturb or cause any issues with your performance. It
is eminently acceptable. Please, I will mention it to Mr. Noble. Send your.
What would you deem to be an appropriate gift for your cast? Obviously, you know them more intimately than myself.
I think he there's like he ponders this, and he has he's staring off into the distance, like 1,000 yards there, for a bit as he ponders this, and he says,
"I believe flowers are traditional for female performers."
Yes, but it would be our honor to toast tomorrow's successes with a beverage of your choice.
Of course. Think nothing of it. I shall arrange to have such libations as I can delivered as a gift to your esteemed performers in anticipation of another splendid evening's entertainment tomorrow night.
Fantastic.
In good health,
Monsieur Hardy. Yep. He drinks some of his bourbon and checks his timepiece and says, Mr. Hardy, Mr. Morgan. He nods and starts going towards the cast, who now you see there's presumably Mr. Noble. He's been talking with the cast while you were talking with Mr. Estes, and Mr. Noble and Mr. Estes are gonna have some words now, and what do you guys do?
I'm gonna try and linger around, and so I'm gonna try and like circulate as though I'm just sort of like maybe going over to the bar or whatever, but I'm gonna try and sort of circle like close enough so I can sort of overhear what Estes and Noble are saying to each other.
Give us a listen.
Oh no, one of my skills that isn't money. I'm afraid I've obviously had a little bit too much of this fizz.
You can spend 3 of your luck and make that a success. I believe that's how it works in the 7th edition. Yeah.
Okay, in which case I shall do so. So I'll take me down to 7 luck. There we go.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
I have good listen. Yeah, okay.
You're obviously writing in your notebook, that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
You went deaf.
You're looking at like your last 3 remaining business cards, being like, I had 500 when I left.
I must have left it in the cab.
Well, hopefully we got that 100 out of the way.
Yeah. It's better to do it now. So you linger around, and you hear them exchanging terse words through clenched teeth and lowered voices, Mr. Noble is telling Mr. Estes in no uncertain terms that given the disaster of tonight, he has no choice but to recommend to the Liebler company that operates the theater that they cancel all upcoming performances of this play. Estes isn't happy about it, but there's very little he can do if the theater company says no. And Mr. Noble is like he is not negotiating at all. Like he's just restating the same thing, and Estes is trying to dance around it.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, because I've got a bit of sympathy for Estes, because he's just trying to put on the best performance he can, and obviously this sort of like pen pushing, like money man's like no, and I'm like, oh, it's always the way, you know. There's always someone like trying to squash artistic expression in the name of the almighty pound. So what I'm doing is, as I'm circling closer, and I've realised that Thaddeus is engrossed in his notebook, I'm gonna say to Thaddeus, but loud enough so that they can hear. I'll say, well, I'm certainly looking forward. I'll say I'm certainly looking forward to tomorrow's performance, Thaddeus. Given everything that's been going on, news of this performance will spread like wildfire. I shouldn't be, and it will be on all the papers. I wouldn't be surprised if the takings were double, triple what they were this evening. Given the notoriety that this play will, I mean, this could be the making of this theatre. Just hoping to play on the guys like you might be making more money out of it.
Yep.
I don't know if it'll do any good, but
yeah, and it does not. It is a very good angle. However, it maybe you misjudged Mr. Noble. It seems like it's not about the money so much as it's about the well, you don't know, because he's not explaining himself too much, but you figure maybe it's more about the image now, because it's like you're being backed up by Miss Hewitt, I think, and like maybe some of the other cast like murmuring in support of your like trying to interject that there's going to be more money.
Okay, like change of tact. So I'm like observing him. I'm like, I don't know what his angle is, but obviously it's not. Like I said, I've misjudged him. It's not money he's concerned with. I'm obviously, I know this is like a small theatre, but I'm gonna sort of have a think about my contacts in the artistic community, because obviously there is going to be a lot of notoriety associated with this play, and this sort of like theatre that's obviously got envisions becoming like a mainstream sort of theatre doesn't want that damage to its reputation. I'm going to see if I can like think of any of like my artistic contacts who might sort of have like, you know, a bit more sort of like an alternate theatre vibe that if they're saying it can't be performed here, maybe I could put them in touch with someone I know and be like, oh, well, here's a theatre that's a bit more edgy, a bit more sort of outright to begin with.
Yeah, definitely, and that is something we can like inspect long term, I think. But you're starting the mental work now to like hash out like where could I go with this, and who could I pitch this to? Yeah, but it seems like it's like Noble is just putting up a wall. Like he hasn't given an inch because he apparently it was never an option. So whatever you say, whatever Estes tries to say, it doesn't really help. He circles back to the fact that it's just what needs to be done. There's police on the premises this evening. Like there's a fracas. There's no like he needs to talk to the company and tell them to shut this thing down. And yeah, eventually he cuts off the conversation because it's not a conversation. Estes is trying to make it one. It's not. So Mr. Noble gives a final nod and says, "Look, good evening to good evening, sir."
I was going to say, I was imagining it like, "Good day to you, sir."
Yeah.
If Mr. Noble leaves, I'm gonna approach Talbot again.
Yeah, Talbot is at the bar. He's having another bourbon, and Gillan is there, being like, Talbot, let's not. I know this isn't what we wanted, but let's be careful with the bottle. And he's like, don't steer me like a damn buffalo. He pours himself some more, and he's clearly upset with his like entirely outdated references to buffaloes and stuff.
Yeah.
But he's clearly out of his element now. He's unbalanced.
I like to offer you to have lunch at my club tomorrow, and perhaps we could discuss today's events.
Estes like mumbles, you think affirmatively, and Gillan like positions himself like close to you and says, I think we would be delighted. However, tomorrow might be too soon. So if you would, I would take your card, and we shall contact you
Permanent.
at an appropriate time.
Yes. I will give them my card.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I have it spring loaded.
Yeah. A card, you say? Yeah.
You need to take some sleight of hand shit so you can just like do that and just be like.
I think you will find my card in your pocket, good sir.
Yeah. Sleight of hand. I think you will find that art is often misunderstood in its own time, but for what it was worth, I know my brother-in-law and I greatly appreciated this night's performance, and I'll bid you a good night. And he takes on his hat and nods to Clinton. We're leaving.
So whilst that's going on, I'll have just been chatting to some of the performers, probably particularly Miss Hewitt, and I'll be saying, well, rest assured, whenever Mr. Noble says, I will dedicate myself to spreading the word of your excellent performance to my many contacts in the artistic community. And if an alternate venue can be found for your performance, be assured that I will do my utmost to make sure that it is discovered.
That is again mighty kind of you. There's I think there must be an angel in heaven without wings at the very moment, Mr. Hardy.
I smile and say, not at all. As a fellow artist who was forced to leave this country for a time due to being misunderstood by their homeland, I have great sympathy and empathy for those who are trying to break through the staid mold of the establishment and are trying to bring a new vision to an unappreciative audience. But they will appreciate the work you are doing here in time. Trust me on that.
Yeah. So I think good evenings are exchanged then by all, and we depart with a little bit of a somber mood from the Scala Theatre, and head off into the night. So that will be the 17th of October, 1928 in our campaign. As the curtain draws to a close on that particular day, and as soon as we have our resident doctor back, we can.
He's just gone to get some more business cards printed out.
Yeah. He's off to the printing house. Guys, I have such need of business cards.
I said to that, run the presses through the night if you have to, damn it.
Yeah.
I need more of that eggshell white paper.
So yeah, that was the prologue section of the campaign.
Call me tonight out to the theatre.
It's because there's a lot of me talking because it's the play that I need. Oh, I suppose it could have been just like, oh, you watch the play and then you talk to the cast, but like going through it this way, there's a lot of like folks sitting back and listening, which is, I think, symptomatic of some of this like older material a little bit. Like there's a lot more words for me to say than in maybe some modern.
I think as well, like you're saying, you could just be like, oh, you watch the play, da 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 da, and then carry on. But obviously, it's more evocative if you can. So, like you say, you can't read the entire play because it's massive. But if you can at least get some of the essentials across. Yep.
Yeah, you can get some of the flavor and the symbology and the sort of feeling across a little bit, at least. So now that Morgan is here as well, so we move on from that night. So you go and have maybe a good night's sleep, and we pick up, and there's going to be some of this in this campaign. There's going to be some like time jumps, like skips ahead. So we skip ahead 2 days from the premiere of The Queen and the Stranger. And Mr. Noble was true to his word. He told the Liebler Company, and they shut that down. So the Scala Theatre will not be featuring The Queen and the Stranger anymore. And Clinton is looking for an alternative place. However, it's there's a positive and a negative to the notoriety that the play has gathered, which is, yeah, there is interest. However, there's also reticence as a result of that. So it does take quite a bit of time, and within these 2 days, you in no way do you have a new place for them to settle. But you know that these wheels can turn quite slowly, and we can keep working on it. But in 2 days, nothing much has changed on that front. So it is cancelled for the moment, and
I would
you haven't.
like it.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you go.
I would like to see if Morgan can procure any of the books mentioned.
Oh yes, they are available.
Yeah, likewise, I want to get copies of the books, particularly the most recent one, the Revenant King.
Yep. Yeah, you can
buy them all.
Yep, you can get the entire bibliography of Talbot Estes, and you can.
I think I'm gonna. It sort of seized by the sort of like the artistic vision of the director, and I'm sort of like, I'm loving his like adaptation of it, and he's been very careful to stress that it's only an adaptation, and like the original he seemed to talk about with almost a sort of revenance. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to get a hold of a copy of the original, but if I can find any fragments or like references to the original, or even if it's only his version, what I'm envisioning doing over the next couple of days is I'm going to throw myself into my work, my painting, so inspired by these books of his that I'm reading, trying to sort of put down on the page my emotions and my feelings that was stirred by the play that we saw.
I'll approach differently. I will use my critical research skill, which is called library use in Call Cthulhu, coupled with the psychology to see if I can find any hidden meanings or themes that flows through his work.
So yes, I think we're both essentially trying to do the same thing, just with different methods.
Yep. Let me see about that. So. So, you can get his books, no trouble. They're not expensive or hard to find, so you can get them. And you know that he said that he has an original copy. And
Okay, in which case, what I'm envisioning that I've been trying to do is, obviously I won't have had time to do all of the paintings in 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you do like your initial sort of sketches and then you
Yeah.
do full painting. I'm going to try and do a sketch, which is going to be like of each of the characters from the play, but sort of try in that sort of abstract way of trying to like portray the feelings that I got from them. With the hope that if I go to him and show them to him, say, I've been so inspired by your work. These are some sketches I've done. I intend to produce a whole range of works on it to try and get the word out there about how fantastic this play was. And then I'm going to say, I was wondering if, under your supervision, of course, I might be able, since I spend a lot of time in France, I do read and speak French, whether I might be allowed, obviously under your supervision, to have a look at the original copy. I think it would really help with my artistic process.
Yeah, and it goes exactly like that. So you bring the sketches to him. You set up a meeting and whatnot. Gillan is there as well. You learn that they live together in the same address, and you bring the sketches over and give them to him. Estes seems elated at this. He is very appreciative, and he tells you that he wants to commission at least one. Like he wants to buy one of these when you turn them into actual paintings.
I would tell him that I would consider it an honor to give it to him as a gift in return for the splendid performance.
He is very appreciative, and you are very much free to study his copy of The King in Yellow.
Yeah, and my plan will literally just be like read that cover to cover, and then whatever emotions it stirs in me, I'm literally going to like run straight home, get the paints out, probably call up my artist suppliers on the way back, grab a whole load of new paints, and then I'm just going to like disappear for the remainder of the 2 days amidst a flurry of like paints and brushes.
Yeah, it's like, give me. You call Morgan. It's like, do you have anything in the realm of uppers? Because we're gonna pull an all-nighter on this.
It's going to be a blur of gouache, heroin, and oil paints for the next.
Yep. There's going to be some turmeric.
No, not heroin, cocaine. You need others.
Well, you're more of an expert in these things than me, so I'll take your word for it.
I'll make something in my little chemist lab.
So yeah, you fling yourself into a flurry of creativity, and you can, if you want to, read the obviously, like, as we know, maybe you don't, but maybe people watching later, maybe they don't know either. Call of Cthulhu has, for some of these like remarkable books, it is very obsessed with literary works, as is only right.
Well, it's in French, right?
Yes, it is in French, and for remarkable works of literature and knowledge in Call of Cthulhu, you usually have a span of time which you must spend with the work to fully study it, dissect it, understand it, internalize it, and it's going to take more than the 2 days that you have now, but you can keep up with the
I'll say
process.
What I'll do then is, if Estes is amenable, I'll have bought, obviously I can't take my whole like art studio with me, but I'll have taken like a sketch pad, some charcoals and stuff like that. So as I'm reading it, I'll be sort of like furiously like doing like a quick sketch as I'm inspired by a particular bit of it, flipping over the page and then doing another one, flipping over the page, and sort of like churning out these like sketches as I'm reading it. And obviously I'll try and make arrangements to like come back on following days to continue.
For sure. Estes is delighted by this this inspiration that you derive from the book. Right. So, Morgan, you were trying to figure out some psychological aspects of Estes's work.
I'm basically gonna psychoanalyze him and his work through his
through his books.
Yeah.
The most accurate kind of analysis you can do. So, please, let's get a roll going. See where we end up.
I mean, I would be very happy if he somehow could get a hold of the young Camilla. I forgot her real name.
John Hewart.
Yeah. And
Gene, rather.
hypnotizer. But I'm thinking that we need to wait with that.
Yeah, and not in 2 days.
Also, given her who her father is, maybe we should, tread carefully.
Yeah,
I love the fact you're like, oh, I must say, I really loved your play. Now look at my pocket watch.
You're under.
Yeah, 3-1.
Yeah, she's the daughter of the Lord Chief Justice, which that seems like a it seems like a thing. But yeah, so what are you rolling when you analyze Estes?
Psychoanalysis.
Here we go.
It's a skill. And I made it.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my
you
God.
made it. You did it. So
This is the curse of crowd control. The higher skill you have, the more you will fail. It's just it's a way of the game.
So I wonder if you can name that, because now it's called additional skill 1.
I did name it. Why wouldn't it? Okay. Yeah, that didn't do anything.
Okay, well, so
Weird.
you read his work, and given you only have 2 days with this, but let's say you start with the early stuff to establish a timeline. The Gray Lady there's nothing in there. Let's say you can blaze through that book in the time that you have. There's nothing in there that is connected to anything in the play at all. It is Estes calls them romantic horrors or macabre romances, and yeah, you can kind of see that it's kind of like a romantic gothic depiction of gruesome stuff in a kind of like an idealized way, I guess, like kind of a romantic idealism going on there as well, which makes for an interesting combination, because it's like the sort of like dour and macabre bits of like gothic literature, and then you put on some like romanticism on it. But yeah, it's not related at all to what he's doing now, it seems. But yeah, as we move forward and you read more of his books, we'll return to this topic. But it seems that at least whatever he's doing now is not from 1905.
No, it's more to start with the beginning, make some notes on it, and compare it to the next book and compare it to the third book and so forth.
Yep.
To draw up a complete picture once he's gotten through the books.
Yep. So 2 days.
He's not interested in the books themselves. He's interested
in the man behind the mask. But is there a mask? We'll find out.
No mask.
Yeah, I mean, spoilers. Yeah, masks are more neuralithless thing. So it's. So we move forward, and it is the 19th of October, 1928. I think you are. Do you have a? I didn't go through your entire cadre of NPCs, Morgan, but do you have a butler or
he has been pestered by he should have hired a valet, but he hasn't gotten to it yet. So
okay.
No.
So yeah. So I'm gonna say the scene
he has
is
a secretary.
Yeah, but that's for work stuff, right?
Yeah.
The secretary doesn't live in your house, so.
No.
So.
Think of the scandal.
Yeah.
I hope she doesn't. I need to.
So you are at a restaurant having let's say brunch, because it's in the weekend. So you're having brunch, or the equivalent, late.
I mean, since it's a Friday, I can tell you exactly where he is. He's at the Reform Club.
The Reform Club. That seems awfully progressive and
It is.
satanic in nature.
It is. And later he will have his dinner at the Hellfire Club.
Cool. So at the Reform Club, it's gonna get warm. It's getting hot in here, so take off all your clothes. So
I told you he was.
yeah, I know. So in the club,
At the club.
there's no getting past this now. I'm stuck in the closet dimension, pocket dimension of rap now. So you both are, as you set up this like morning breakfast brunch meeting, and you're having your thing. And Morgan, you brought your mail with you as you went, because you picked it up and as you were heading out of the house. And it's a like some advertisements you have no use for, so you put those in the trash already. But then you have there's like a bill or two, and then or like an invoice, and then there's one which isn't that. It is a letter addressed to thine self. And now, if this was a show, we would have the title pop up, which is The Tatters of the King, Book 1, The Madman. And you read the letter over breakfast, discussing all the insignificant things of the day with Clinton as you eat. And Clinton looks like he's been working around the clock.
Yeah, like I say, I'm a bit bedraggled. Maybe like a few like smears of like charcoal.
Sorry, was it breakfast? He takes that at the Oriental Club. Sorry.
Oh yeah, so we are at the Oriental Club then.
And like I say, bit bedraggled, bit charcoal on my face. I've got a sketchbook with me, and I'm sort of like a pencil or something. I'm sort of doodling in it as we're having breakfast. I'm a little bit less chatty than I am normally. So I'm like so focused on what we're doing. But sort of when you're saying things, I'm just like, oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you opened the letter with the letter opening a knife that is given to you by the staff when you requested such a thing. So you slice it open, and there's, as soon as I can add it to your journal, here we go.
Ooh, a handout.
Yes, it's a handout. However, it is literally in handwriting, so that might be difficult on a computer screen with that resolution. So I will read you can read it from the handout, but I will read it out loud as well. So St. Agnes Asylum for the Deranged, near Wobley, Herefordshire.
I like it. Near Wobley.
Yeah.
It's about that.
Yeah, it's not in there. So Friday, the 18th of October. This is where our timelines get fucked up, but we will leave that be. Dear Sir Morgan, I apologize for this unsolicited correspondence, but pray that you will do me the favor of reading it through and considering its request. This letter comes to you as the author of the paper Basic Anxiety and Ontological Insecurity, which, if I may say so, I much admired, particularly your analysis of the work of Dr. Karen Horney. I am a consulting doctor at St. Agnes's Asylum here in Herefordshire, and I am seeking an expert opinion on how to proceed in the matter of an inmate's case. If I may prevail upon you, these are the outline of the facts. Patient W is a young man from a good line who, holding no employ, spent much of his time before his admission in private study. In the autumn of 1926, a terrible incident occurred, and W's father and sister were left murdered. W, much troubled, was committed to this asylum shortly thereafter upon the application of his brother and the diagnosis of the family physician. W is suffering from extended bouts of scotophobia, which you know to mean night terrors, which is you sort of experience these like waking nightmares from which you cannot wake. So it's kind of having a panic attack. I'm not a medical professional, so I can't describe it correctly, but it's like panic attack at night while you sleep. That give him temporary but intense anxiety. This has proved treatable with medication, and I am of the happy opinion that I may recommend his release when this period of mandatory confinement comes to an end this November. Here the problem arises. W's brother has been urging me to recommend his continued residence. I am surprised at our playing opposite roles in this not uncommon disagreement, and I find the stance of the family unusually rigid. I am currently at a loss to understand the motive. I am hopeful that you will consent to an interview with me on this matter. Again, I regret this communication without our previous interaction, but my closest colleagues have not the patience for psychoanalytics that I believe to be the way to examine such cases. There are some unusual aspects here, and perhaps this might be an interesting study for you. I shall be visiting London for a few days, beginning the 28th of October. I shall be staying at the Great Western Hotel. Please contact me there should you be willing to meet. You are, of course, welcome to bring a colleague or an assistant, should you so wish. Your obliged and obedient servant, Charles Highsmith. So, you read the letter?
Mm-hmm. I do love handouts.
There's a bunch of them.
He reads the letter while he's having his eggs and coffee. And mumbles a bit for himself. Most interesting, my good Clinton.
Sorry, what? I say as I look up from my sketchbook. That was probably like half a dozen that I've sort of ripped off and like thrown on the table. Sorry, what, oh boy?
Well, I'm being called upon for my studies and expertise. A colleague is asking for my opinion.
Surely that's not anything unusual to someone of your standing in the medical community. That is.
No. He pretends it's common, but it's really not. As he's an alienist. No, of course not. It is interest. I feel that interests me greatly personally. It's the feel of nightmares, if we'll use the layman's term.
Oh, I look a bit interested when you say that and say, "Oh, well."
Which is why I took interest in the young miss at the play, because you mentioned having quite vivid dreams.
Well, yes, I know. Obviously, I don't know these things from a medical point of view, but I certainly know from an artistic point of view that many artists are believed to have suffered from certain manias or illnesses and have had dreams that have inspired their work.
It is the unfiltered unconsciousness, and that tells a great deal about a person.
Well, yes, I mean,
and he kind of flicks a bit of charcoal away from his napkin.
Well, yes, obviously, I'm as someone who prides himself in being an artist. We try and capture something of that those unconscious desires, those urges in our paintings, our poetry, our plays, and we try and convey something of that to the audience. It obviously from a different angle to yourself, but it's something I'm interested in myself, purely from a point of view of an inspiration for creating further works. I'm sure, and I sort of gesture at like the sort of half dozen sketches there are. I'm sure as you can see the play we saw a few nights ago is has gripped my imagination that I've been lucky enough to catch a glimpse at the original work. And yes, it's quite seized my mind, and I'm trying to capture that. I'm sort of sketching as I talk. I'm trying to capture that on paper. So yeah, dreams can certainly be a powerful thing.
Did he agree for you to see the original one?
Yeah, yes, he was. He was quite willing. I've only perused the initial opening pages so far, but I have made arrangements to go back. I was hoping to produce a series of works based on the original that should, as I hope, the play find a further venue that perhaps might be used to complement the play in a way. I've already said I would quite happily gift one of the finished pieces to Mr. Estes. Seems the least I can do given all the trouble the old fellow's been through whilst trying to get his vision to the audiences.
Yes, and he he takes some of the sketches and looks at them. Interesting.
You can see that they're mostly sort of flowing, sort of quite dark charcoal pictures depicting the various very sketchy, sort of like quickly done. We're depicting like the characters and some of the scenery that they use. So like there'll be a sketch of the ballroom scene, with like the child and like the stranger and stuff like that, and trying to get across like the emotion so there's like more space between the child as everyone sort of awkwardly like moves around it. That's
maybe we could. My wife Bethany, of course, always did mention you of a particular sensitive nature.
Well, yes, Sissy was always more practical than myself. I think that's why she. Well, I was something of the black sheep of the family. Our parents had good solid heads on their shoulders, to put it politely. I don't think they really approved or understood of my my abilities and my need to produce art. But Sissy always did. If she did not understand, she at least did me the courtesy of not judging me for it.
No, she seemed concerned at times, but certainly no judgment on her path. I do believe she did not go around judging people.
She always did have a big heart. I remember saying to her when we were young children that I don't know if she told you the story of when our first pet died, and she was broken-hearted about the whole affair, and I told her that her heart would get her into trouble one of these days. That's why I was quite glad when she married yourself. You seem to have a strong, forthright character, if you don't mind me saying, and I'm sure you both made each other very happy. And I sort of look a bit sad and sort of sullen for a while as I think about my sister.
Yes, and he fiddles about with his cigarette case and take out one of these fancy Egyptian cigarettes and lights it.
I sort of raise my, I don't know, whatever, a glass of like orange juice or whatever it is, rather than with like a breakfast, and I sort of say it's really not a suitable liquid for making a toast, but it's all we have. To Bethany.
Indeed, to Bethany.
Chink.
And he silently smokes the cigarette while looking at Clinton. Well, he looks at him, but he really looks behind him. And he sits in silence.
Sort of trying to break the awkward silence and change the subject a little. I say, so, Thaddy, what do you intend to do about this consultation request? Are you going to go, or?
Yes, I am.
Well, if there's anything I can do to help, obviously, just let me know. I'm very busy at the moment, but as you can see, but to be honest, I could do with a bit of a break from all this. So I remember Sissy used to tell me that it wasn't healthy to get so absorbed in my work.
No. How are you sleeping these days?
Not particularly well. I'm always the same when I take on a new project. The thoughts that are rolling around in my head that I feel compelled to try and capture them on canvas. I find it quite difficult. You can see like I've got bags under my eyes. I find it quite difficult to sleep when I've got so many thoughts that are just almost bursting out of my skull and are clamoring for my attention to get them down on the page. I've not had a good night's sleep in days, I'll be honest with you. If it hadn't been for that little tonic that you'd whipped me up, I fear I would have quite collapsed of exhaustion by now.
Yes. He sits there contemplating trying out his hypnosis on his brother-in-law, and kind of runs through internal monologue with Bethany, what she would say if he were to do that. Maybe we should, and he puts out a cigarette. Maybe we should enjoy ourselves this evening. It is Friday. I usually go to one of the more exclusive clubs. Perhaps you would be interested in joining me.
Oh, splendid! As I say, I could do with a break. Yes, if you're sure I'll. If I know some of these clubs are a little selective about their membership. If you're quite sure I'm not going to cause you any embarrassment by.
No, these are more your inclination.
Oh,
and he smiles.
Splendid then.
Whatever he means by that.
Excellent. As I say, I could definitely do with a break.
Good. We will have dinner. There. I'll have you picked up at 6.
Excellent. I shall look forward to it. And have your man knock loudly on the door if I'm in the back in the studio. Sometimes I don't hear the door, so tell him to knock loudly.
Yes.
Well, I won't keep you I won't keep you any further. I must get back to my work, but I look forward to our dinner later. And I stand up, sort of put my hat on, shake hands, and then I exit stage left.
Okay. So, do you want to elaborate on the Eyes Wide Shut Club before we jump forward in time, or?
It's called the Hellfire Club, and Hector inherited the club and the property from his father, who let it go into disrepair or obscurity, and Hector had, with his wife Alice, had resurrected it. It is what the plebs probably would call Satanists, but they're really Luciferians, which is a version of it, where they believe that enlightenment shall be gained. It's one of those occultist movements around this time, where like with Aleister Crowley and all his not quite but so they believe that God and the devil are one of the same, and both will lead to damnation. The only salvation is through Lucifer, the morning light, the angel of light.
Yeah, I believe they believe that it's like a metaphor for like personal enlightenment.
Yes. So it's a mix of a progressive social club and with occult themes running through it. They have a more religious thing going on Saturdays on the Sabbath, but Friday is fun and games.
Yeah, and if you spend time there long enough, Johnny Depp is going to try and buy a book from you.
I need to know about the ninth gate.
Yeah. Right.
What?
So
I'm not saying he's a Satanist.
Just playing it subtly.
I mean, if it walks like brimstone, you know how that goes.
I'm not saying he's a Satanist, but like his calling card has like Baphomet's goat-like head on it.
Yeah. Oh, that's trademark.
I imagine as we're like, turning from the taxi to go in, and instead of pulling his hat, and he just pulls on like a full like goat set.
I'm going in, Clinton.
That's the
dress code.
That's the Saturday. Friday is more casual.
Yeah. Smart casual. Saturday is the smart goat. Right. So you have a grand old time at the Hellfire Club, and then we're gonna. You're planning to take Dr. Highsmith up on his offer of meeting up at the Great Western Hotel?
Yes, I will write to the hotel and let them inform that I accept his invitation, and we'll be seeing him on, what's it like, the 28th or something?
Yeah, the 28th is when he's going to be there.
And he's probably going to bring Clinton, unless Clinton completely deteriorates at that time.
No, I think I'll be looking like slightly more bedraggled the next time you see me, but it's just obvious, like tiredness and the fact I've been working and sort of like viewing this French manuscript whenever, and sort of throwing myself into this project and sort of like neglecting like my health and like food and drink and stuff like that. So I've just been all about the work. So, but again, when you say, oh, you know, like I'm going to go and do this, do you want to come along? You'll be like, oh yeah, you know, I probably should have a break. So whenever you say that to him, he's like, oh yeah, I should have a break. But it's like, unless someone tells him, he doesn't really realise, because he doesn't realise how much time's passed. He's just like focusing on the work.
Well, that's good, because then he didn't notice he was having dinner with in a satanic club.
I did notice that. I'm like, Thaddeus has gone up several notches in my estimation.
It's like he is fastidious, regimented, boring Luciferian cultist that has goat rituals on set. Yeah.
Well, I'll personally comforted to know that, despite the fact you've obviously got your professional life, which you're very professional, you're very methodical, you're very scientific, but also you recognise there's a need for like a more sort of artistic, sort of like liberal sort of element, you know, sort of cutting loose every now and again. So in a way, I feel sort of I'm no expert, obviously, but I feel that's more healthy, because I'm like, oh, you're not just doing the doctor stuff all the time.
So, Clinton isn't destroyed in the meantime. Also, you haven't completed your study of Estes' copy of The King in Yellow, and that is specifically because it's Estes' personal copy. Yeah. He has made notes in the margins. There are leaf like inserted in there of his own making, notes and stuff. So
I think what I'll probably be, cause that's quite interesting, what I'll probably be doing as well is as I'm sort of doing these sketches in a similar manner to what he's doing. So I don't want to mark the books, it's his text. But as I'm doing these like sketches, there'll probably be like my own notes on the text sort of scribbled on the actual sketches as like little reminders. So like later on when I'm doing the final pieces, I can take them away to my studio and sort of go, oh yeah, I was trying to show this, and or there's this passage from the original text, and I'll have like a few sort of scroll notes on it.
Yep. So that takes
as
quite a
long
bit of
as
time.
his studio isn't, the walls isn't covered with obscure references, and he's gone full nude artist or anything like that. Thaddeus
I
will
am
be
the canvas.
yeah.
I
That
have
is
such things to show you.
Thaddeus will keep an eye on him from time to time and check out. Like I'm guessing he's willing to show the sketches and stuff.
Oh yeah, I know.
So unless something very unsettling turns up, he will assume he has it covered. But he will have him shined up a bit for going to meet Mr. Dr. Charles.
Yeah, I'll probably like give myself like a quick wash, like change into like a fresh suit, etc. So obviously it doesn't matter while I'm in the studio. I'm just wearing like comfortable trousers and like a shirt. But obviously if we're going out, appearances and all, so I'll change into like a nice suit, get the walking cane and the hat, etc.
Yeah, you're gonna look that credit rating, right?
That's it.
And
Yep.
Thaddeus do enjoy his walks, so they will walk there. He do not like caddies.
Yep. Suspicious machines.
Well, killer machines.
Yeah, that as well. By the way, either of you connected with the war?
Yes. Thaddeus was a field surgeon.
Yep.
Or army doctor.
So, 28th of October, 1928. You make your way to the Great Western Hotel, which is located at the Paddington Station. It is the final stop of the Great Western Railway? So he has obviously arrived from the country to the last stop via train. Right, so we shall start the scene with you having arrived to the hotel. All the arrangements have been made, and you and Dr. Highsmith are coordinated to meet in the lobby by the hotel staff. And I have a token for Dr. Highsmith. Oh, I need to change his name permission as well. Oh, there we go. Alrighty then. So, Dr. Highsmith. So you can see the token, but Dr. Highsmith has brown hair. The beard is immaculately trimmed. He has bushy eyebrows, and he dresses exactly for the part of a country gentleman in tweeds and brogues. And he, as soon as he gets there to meet you, you have shaken hands, exchanged hellos and your names. He immediately starts smoking a pipe, which seems to be a part of who he is as well. So he gets the pipe going, and he has ordered the tea from the staff. And while waiting for the tea, he casually asks after, like, how has the weather been in London? It is quite cold already for it being late October, up in the country at least.
It's London.
Fog, is it?
Yes. With a touch of rain.
Well, it is a classic.
Pea soup. You did mention, and he takes out the letter. A patient you only mentioned by W.
Yes. And he delays his answer while the staff bring the tea on a platter.
It's Clinton who has patience for small talk. Thaddeus does not.
Well, Mr. Highsmith is a man of science, as you will discover. Let me get my notes. Okay. So if my timeline, which is one day off, then this would be Friday? Or
according
Sunday?
to Google, it's Sunday.
Sunday, yeah.
So would this be the 29th then?
No, it's
28th.
So we're gonna go with Sunday. Okay.
Yeah, let's go with Sunday.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So the tea is set. He puts 2 pieces of sugar into his, stirs it as is only proper, and says, "You understand that these matters, being what they are, and us being who we are, quite sensitive and confidential. So, before we delve into the details, I would like to secure your assurance that the privacy of the matter and those involved, obviously, and the good name of Saint Agnes are maintained in whatever transpires next, as I read you into my confidence."
Of course, my good doctor. That is a given.
Good. So I refer to my patient by W in my letter. His full name is Alexander Roby. I'll put it in chat. And Alexander is brother to, and you may recognize him, being as he is a prominent banker in London, Graham Roby. Yeah, so he's sort of like pausing, taking some tea, giving you the option of like where do you want to proceed from here, because you obviously had something in mind. Cat butt.
Cat butt.
That cat ass.
The cat did not agree in keeping it a secret, by the way.
Did not sign the NDA.
Yeah. Well, I am interested in your patient and your case. It is of a particular interest of mine. Not only the human psyche, but also the connection to dreams and night terrors, as you wrote about. Could you describe them some more, and maybe you have his papers with you?
Let me check my notes. So the symptoms, you mean?
Also, what drugs you have prescribed?
So, as I mentioned in my letter, the patient, that is to say, Mr. Roby, seems to suffer from scotophobia, night terrors. The episodes themselves, where are we? There we go. The episodes themselves manifest when his sleep is interrupted by periods of intense panic. So the symptoms would include then the pulse and the breathing being rapid, pupils being dilated, hair standing on end. Mr. Roby is confused and he is hard to calm down. And as you are well aware, this is the dictionary definition of night terrors. And I have successfully medicated Mr. Roby with a heavy dose of laudanum for these periods that he experiences.
Pause here.
Mm-hmm.
So, opium,
Mm-hmm.
laudanum is a
Yes.
derivative of.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if Thaddeus knows it, but it has ill effects on dreams. Bad.
Mm-hmm.
Bad.
It's also a sedative because it's an opiate. So
Yeah, but it actually induces nightmares. I don't know if Thaddeus would know that, or if you're growing with
Thaddeus
that.
probably thinks there's medicine was fucked up back then.
Yeah,
is what I'm saying.
I know, but it's like we don't need to, we could have the fictional science and the real life science. We don't need to mix those. I'm just asking if this is something Thaddeus would know. I mean, he did ask for his medical advice.
Yeah, and your opinion on like beyond, because he has the diagnosis, right? So as he says in his letter, he's all good to release Roby. He has figured it out. It's night terrors. He has the medication for it, and he wants you to help him figure out why he shouldn't release Roby.
Ah, okay.
Is the intent of the letter? Like he thinks it's like the case should be closed, and he is disturbed by the fact that he wants to release a patient, and the family of the patient doesn't want him to do that because it's usually the other way around.
Yeah.
And he wants you to help him figure this out. But he says that, and confirms it now, that he has pinpointed the problem and he knows the cure. It is laudanum when these things occur, and they occur on a specific period. He explains to you. So,
might I ask a question? You say that the patient is gripped by these night terrors. Have you attempted to speak to him about the nature of his dreams, the nature of this feeling that he has? Has he been able to articulate what precisely it is that he's afraid of?
It is not so much a state of fear as you or I might be afraid of, let us say, spiders or snakes. It is not a fear in that sense. It is not the higher mind, the cognitive mind. It is. I'm struggling with the words to put them in plain. Was it king or queen at this time? King. Plain King's English, but it is a spasm of the psyche which leaves the sufferer much confused. They are unsettled, both in body and mind, and it is not so much something to be articulated as it is a state to be endured. It is not something to put into words afterwards. I don't think Mr. Roby has not been successful at any rate.
Obviously, knowing that Thaddeus has been banging on about hypnotism for the last 4 4 days. I'm going to say, as creating like a bit of an opening for Thaddeus, I'm going to say, have you considered placing the patient under a state of hypnosis where you might be able to articulate the feelings in like a safe environment? But Thaddeus is an expert in such things. Perhaps it might yield some further information that might shed light on his condition.
This is not something I am familiar with, and as such cannot either practice myself.
I sort of sit back and up under the table, just like give Thaddeus his like leg a nudge with my hand.
It is one of the fields of my studies. As I said, very keenly interested in dreams, and especially the connections to the psyche, the well-being of the psyche seems to have a correlation to dreams, and hypnosis would help reach the unconscious part of the psyche. When we are conscious, we have our drum roll, and he doesn't do that. Masks on.
Dun, dun, dun.
Reference.
Which can be taken off with the use of hypnosis. But I do understand that your issue isn't as much as with the patient and his cure, but more inquire into why the family doesn't wish to have
the surrounding facts are what perplex me, not so much the patient itself. I am confident, and he digs into his briefcase because you asked for the papers, so he digs in there, gets the stack out, hands it to you. Please give me a medicine roll if you want to.
Yay!
Dig in.
I do. Yay!
Oh.
Oh.
He's suffering a case of the measles.
It seems we need to bloodlet him heavily.
Pass me the leeches and the load of them.
Amputate the head.
Do I want to use luck on that? Do I? That's a lot of luck. How much luck is that? That's
at least a couple of cats worth.
That's a lot of luck. No, I don't want to use that much luck. It's bad. I'll take it.
How much luck do you actually start with?
Well, it's just a stat. So if you have whatever it is in the stat, that's how much luck you have.
Oh, okay.
And if you spend points, your temporary goes down. So if you have to make a luck roll, let's see, we are walking down the alley and he wants to test who of us get marked. It's the one who...
Because my luck is shit.
With the lowest luck, or the one who fails the luck. But I will let it stand. He has no understanding of this gibberish. This clearly a fan of Lorium has prescribed, and he's probably a bit, that's wrong, and that clouds his mind. Let's go with that.
Yeah, maybe you're like, I wouldn't use laudanum, but you can't argue with the results.
Yeah,
it's probably calmed him the fuck down. Like, regardless of any potential nightmares, like if he's limp as a fish, then success.
But being a vain man, he can't let that come to the surface. So he will try to keep up appearances and make the whole.
Yeah. So,
I what have the family asked of you, Dr. Highsmith? Have they asked to keep him at St. Agnes, or has it been more subtle?
Let me refer to my stuff here. So Aside from the original signing of the commitment by Alexander's brother Graham and the family physician, Dr. Lionel Trollope, I'll put it in chat.
Trollope? Was that his name?
Yep. Trollope. After that, I have not been in direct communication with Alexander's family at all. All our correspondence has been through the family physician, Dr. Trollope. And Dr. Trollope has been urging me over the last year to keep Alexander committed and not to cast aspersions, for far be it from any of us present to do that. But I think it likely that the family is leaning on Dr. Trollope to communicate this to me. And we arrive at my present predicament, and the reason why I have approached you. I would wish to know why, and I would. There are several things I would like to ask of you in specific to help my case. As we have established, the diagnosis is quite clear. Wise men may differ on the appropriate cure. However, I have arrived at one, so that is not in question so much as the surrounding facts, as I have said. So, I would first the first thing I would ask of you is to calm down your compatriot there, who is flipping the fuck out with that failed sanity roll.
Yeah, sorry. It's when I did the edit, it's like it's reset some of my stats to like basics or default levels. So I'm just correcting them, and I clicked on it by accident.
Yep.
I'm just suddenly sat there, whoa! Give me some of that cocaine. Give me some of that laudanum, that's right.
Yeah. So, one of the things I would ask you to do is, would you intervene and perhaps hear what Dr. Trollope has to say? For he and I have seemed to retreated. It seems that we have retreated to our entrenched positions. I have my professional opinion, he has his, perhaps enforced by the family, be that as it may, but he has his view, I have mine, and we haven't moved, and perhaps your independent involvement could move things from this position. Secondly, if you think it appropriate, you could even consult Alexander's brother, Graham Roby. Like I said, I have not been in contact with him, and I do not think that at this time my approaching him would yield any significant results. Again, I lean on your independence from the facts for my hope of moving things somewhere. I have his address to give for this. I would dearly like to hear what Graham has to say, maybe something of Alexander's life before all this. What was he like? What led to this admission to the asylum? And I would dearly like to know these things to consider them in my decision on Alexander's case. Like I have said before, I am planning to recommend Alexander to release to the care of either a family member or a convalescent home. And if his family proves to be insistent on the matter, it will have to be a convalescent home, as apparently his family is not an option then. If you can find me something to help in this consideration, I would very much like to receive that information and adjust my recommendation as appropriate. And I am struggling slightly, as this is not the regular thing to do, as I'm sure you are quite aware.
Quite. I understand.
And it is difficult from the great remove. I am St. Agnes is in Herefordshire, and the family Dr. Trollope and Graham Roby both reside in London, so it is quite the distance.
I have great respect for St. Daphnis and the work they do. So yes, I would be most pleased to offer my assistance in helping you.
Fantastic.
Okay, so do you know how far it is? I mean, I'm guessing Thaddeus has an idea how long Hertfordshire is away, but Dennis has no idea.
John might be able to help us. Western Midlands from London by train.
Well, I don't know by train. I know if you're going by road nowadays, you'd be looking at about just under an hour.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's probably
a couple of hours. Let's put it that way.
Just try
Yeah.
check on this.
I mean, trains didn't go super fast back then.
Yeah, because they probably transport goods at the same time.
You're talking modern day by train, just under a couple of hours.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's put it at some hours.
Yeah. How long would you be staying here at the Great Western?
Oh, Dr. Morgan, he takes a sip, takes a little bite of a biscuit, and says, "I was just about to invite you to journey back with me. Maybe perhaps you and your assistant would like to visit St. Agnes and perhaps obtain, shall we say, a pure sample of my patient, rather than first entangling yourself with the business in London and then approaching him with preconceived notions implanted by others and facts."
I understand. That would be very prudent. We would like to accept that invitation.
I must say I'm glad of this. Did you introduced Clinton, right?
Yes.
Yes. So I will be able to offer both of you residence should you wish to join me in St. Agnes. It is Webley is very close, and there is I believe there is a tavern with a couple of rooms called the Wheat Chief. However, I can provide you with a residence for the stay, so I can accommodate you, and if you would like to, we can take the next train back. I have very little other business in London that I cannot address via letter, so...
No, yes, of course. But you understand you must give us
of course.
time to pack
of course.
and get ready.
Very, very well. Very well. So, shall we say tomorrow, first train?
Yes.
Splendid. I shall have the hotel staff here conduct appropriate business with you and coordinate our efforts. I am pleased by today's events, Dr. Morgan, Mr. Hardy.
Dr. Highsmith. We are pleased to help.
I shall meet you on the morrow then.
On the morrow. And they
Exit Dr. Highsmith.
fade scene.
Yeah, fade scene. And maybe for the first time in history, do we want to call it a night? It's almost on the sort of preset time.
What?
So do we want to go further, or do we want to call it here for the night? We can. I'm just asking.
That's a good place to call it, I think.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Mm.
Obviously, happy to chat for a bit afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so that is the first session, and that will give me some more time to prep, because it's been a whirlwind lately. Yeah. So the first session there, we went through the prologue and started with the first actual bit of the campaign. So.
And we even, threw in some casual Satanism and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In which case, I shall stop the recording.
Yes.